When did your doctor completely and utterly roast you? My female doctor, now retired, once told me I had great birthing hips. I'm a male. When I was in middle school until 10th grade, I'd get violent nausea anytime I got hungry. It felt like my stomach was on fire, and I'd miss a lot of school from feeling like crap, although I was a good student and wasn't falling behind in any way. She agreed to take me to a gastroenterologist to be checked out. Before agreeing to do an endoscopy, the gastro accused me of exaggerating because I was a teen girl, and that's apparently just what young women do. He suggested I was just making up the symptoms for attention and then asked me point blank if I was lying about my pain level to skip school and suggested I had a mental health issue I was trying to cover for. I had frickin' GERD and severe acid reflux, as confirmed by the endoscopy he reluctantly agreed to perform on me. Instead of letting it go, the gastro made a point of angrily telling me that I had the stomach of an 80-year-old man and must have been intentionally eating in a way to F up my stomach. I have a family history of stomach problems and GERD. I don't understand why it was so implausible that my brother could have acid reflux at a young age, but I must be a hysterical liar when I claim to have the same symptoms in my teens. When I was about 4, I got diagnosed with child asthma. The doctor told my mum it was her fault because she decided to have a child despite having asthma herself. "I'm sure it's not that bad," said the intake nurse at the inpatient psychiatric unit that I was checking myself into after a self-deletion attempt following an attempt of the unspeakable act on me. "I'm okay. I did a short stay at the inpatient and everyone else who worked there, and honestly, and maybe more significantly everyone else who was also staying there, was kind, thoughtful, helpful, and seemed to be much better at their jobs. And this was about 2 years ago now. Things are better, but not perfect. I think that sometimes that is hard, especially for people who are in my life. They seem to be waiting for a version of me that is perfectly fine, and I'm not sure she exists anymore. But it is better than it was, most of the time. Sometimes it's harder, or at least similar, but I'm still here, and sometimes being still here is okay being the only success for the day. I have my work, I have my son, I have my circle of people who really stuck by me, and that's a lot to hold on to." Today we learned that there are many doctors and nurses with a breathtaking lack of empathy or personal skills. Let's be thankful that these seem to be the minority in most cases, as a lot of these individuals immediately move on to more capable, compassionate caregivers. In the ER, about 6 months pregnant with heavy spotting and no noticeable fetal movement. Idiot doctor is unable to find the baby's heartbeat. Just looks up at me and says, "Yep, probably dead in there." He couldn't possibly have said it in a more casual, offhand manner. Note that I delivered my son 3 months later, perfectly healthy. Different kind of doctor, it was a dentist. He said after poking that sharp piece of steel into my not dead yet gums, "Oh come on, it doesn't hurt that much," after I jumped and said ouch. I looked at him, got up and walked out. I now have a very nice dentist. He asked me if I felt I was lonely. I said I don't think of myself as lonely. He wrote down lonely and underlined it. "I don't know why, but this strikes me as particularly funny, as if the doctor looked at you, narrowed his eyes, and then wrote it and underlined the word." I went to get a lump on my groin checked out and had to remove my underpants. The doctor started a whole speech about size isn't everything, which is not what I went there for. He said I should be happy carrying around a bit of weight, because in drought the fattest cows die last. Seriously, what the frick? I had gained a lot of weight around my midsection a few years back, and my times of the month stopped. I was scared, young, and thought I was pregnant, but the tests came back negative. I went to a doctor to have myself checked out, and she did some basic tests before telling me, "There's nothing wrong with you, you're just fat." I already had some body confidence issues, but hearing it from my doctor when I was trying really hard to get in shape really hurt. I worked hard to lose weight, but my belly wouldn't shrink. I was just starting to feel really sick, and I went back to the doctor, who again told me it was just that I was fat. I was crushed. A year later, I went to the hospital for something unrelated, and it was discovered I had a giant ovarian cyst about the size of a newborn. It was throwing off my hormones, making me gain weight, among many other issues. I've since lost weight, and I'm feeling super confident now, but that doctor really messed me up for a long time. Something similar happened to a friend of mine. She was slim, her stomach kept growing, and she was very firm to the touch. A female doctor told her she was pregnant. My friend said unless it's the second coming of Christ, she can't be, as she hasn't done the deed for months. The doctor tells her she must have gotten blackout drunk and done the deed with someone because she's definitely pregnant, no need for a test. Male doctor 2 was seen for a second opinion and pretty much straight away realized it was a giant cyst requiring surgery. Oh, it's all between your ears, they said after missing at least 1, but probably 2 crippling vitamin deficiencies by not ordering the right test. It took me 2.5 years of thinking I was lazy and pathetic before I went to another doctor and got diagnosed. I was having digestive issues I eventually learned were a result of my undiagnosed cancer. My first doctor had just suggested I should wipe better. I went to get an earache checked, and the first thing the doctor said was, yeah, so I'm going to put you on some medicine for the ear, but we've got to do something about your face. Your acne is absolutely terrible. Thanks, doc. Getting out of the army, you're 100% healthy. My medical record was about 6 inches thick. I went to a civilian doctor, and they were astonished anyone would say that. I am rated 80% disabled. My mother and grandfather were both injured in the army. They will do everything in their power to claim you're healthy, because if you're injured, they pay your medical bills for life. They tried to tell my grandpa that losing all of his teeth and having a crack on his forehead did not qualify him for a Purple Heart. I just don't know how you could be in so much pain being so young. I'm not going to be able to write you a prescription. My response was, you're an idiot. I came in because I was hurt at work doing heavy construction. I'd never even asked for a prescription in the first place. I'd assumed I was getting an x-ray to see if I'd broken anything. I woke up in the hospital and heard a nurse running out saying, "He's awake!" The doctor comes into the room and tells me to move my toes. I ask them where I am and what's going on. He just gets more insistent at me to move your toes. I asked again where I was and what was going on, and he almost yelled at me, "Move your toes!" I said I am moving my toes, and immediately he says, "You'll never be able to walk again." And that's how I found out I was a paraplegic at 21 years old. I'd been in a single car wreck and was thrown 70 or 80 feet from the car, and my vertebra was dislocated and laying next to another one. I don't remember the car wreck, but that exchange with my doctor is burned into my brain, and that was 31 years ago. I had a seatbelt on, but I went off a small hill next to the interstate after clipping an end off the guardrail. Flipped the car down the hill, and seat and seatbelt gave way under the pressure, and I went out the driver door window. My back collapsed around the door sill and dislocated one vertebra next to the one below it. I'm a big guy, 6'4" and 235 pounds at the time, and the force was too much for the seat structure. I found out all of these details over the next few weeks while I was in rehab. Oh, you can't be in that much pain. You must have more energy than that. Turns out the lining of my nerves was being destroyed. I was becoming paralyzed. Painfully. I did a video chat service to talk to a doctor for 15 minutes. I told her my symptoms and thoughts since we were low on time. I'd been very sick for weeks, possibly urinary tract infection and respiratory infection. Also gave my other ideas from my symptoms. She told me I had valley fever and told me all about it over chat, and we got cut off at 15 minutes. I got her final email, which should have a prescription on it, and was told she actually thought I had somatic symptom disorder, aka that I was making all of this up and was perfectly fine. Her prescription was for a frickin' psychologist. She'd told me in detail about my possible valley fever, even though I said I hadn't been to the areas she said it was prevalent in. I made an appointment with my normal doctor and had a few tests run. Had a respiratory infection and a frickin' kidney infection. 10 or so days of medication and I was okay. My god, I was so angry at that quack though. Was it April Fools? Did they just grab someone off of Fiverr to cover for them that day while they were on a video consultation duty so they could head to the pub early? You know, I know every profession has the capacity to be unprofessional, but cops, soldiers, and doctors are the professions it's most jarring to hear about this kind of thing in. When I was 16 and dealing with partial deafness, look, sometimes being a teenage girl is hard, but it's hard to parent them too, so there's no need to exaggerate things to make things harder for your parents. Now knock it off, there's nothing wrong with you. 2 tumors, 9 surgeries, and a CSF leak later, yes, doctor, yes, there really was something wrong. I'd send that doctor a card with images of your tumors with a note that reads, "The inadequacy of your professional capabilities is a measurable danger to public health." I'd just gone through my second hip surgery following a car accident. The pain was persistent. My doctor said, "On the bright side, you'll qualify for a full hip replacement in 10 years. Frick my life, 10 more years of this crap and another surgery? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It wasn't said to me, but someone I knew. I work at a hospital, and so does my mother. We had a 43-year-old woman who had a very rare form of cancer that spread incredibly fast to just about everywhere in her body. From diagnosis to death was about 12 weeks. The medications and therapies and general lack of mobility caused her to become swollen and obese. She was a terribly sweet lady. They took her down to radiology for a scan, and the technician made a bunch of really mean comments about her weight because she was too large for our machines, so they had to arrange for a transfer to another hospital for her scans, and then have her transferred back. The technician thought that because Miss Jeannie was dying and sick, that she was deaf or didn't understand English any longer. So while they were alone, she made so many mean comments. Miss Jeannie waited until she was back in her room, waiting for her transfer, before she started crying. I'll never understand people who feel the need to make others feel less than or badly. Sadly, the tech still works for us. After years of fertility treatments, we finally got the wife knocked up. Just before the 12-week mark, they found something. The something was anencephaly. Not knowing what it was, we kept asking doctors what this meant and got very doctory answers. The prognosis isn't good, or it presents significant challenges to the fetus, all of which made it sound bad but somehow manageable. As we continued through the gambit of doctors, we eventually ended up with the one who had that declarative Scandinavian accent. When we asked him, "What does this mean for the child?" he answered, "His condition is incompatible with life. If it survives to birth, it will only live for days." It was at once soul-crushing and a relief. We finally knew how bad it was, but we knew what we had to do. The decision was no longer ours, and while it hurt, the clarity was welcome. Recalling this story many years later still makes me feel emotional. Finally worked up the courage to work on my mental health problems and asked my doctor for a recommendation to see a therapist. His only response was that I was too poor to get a therapist since my health insurance sucked. That was a bad day. I don't know if anyone will see this, but in perfect timing, my university was looking for therapy participants for a study. I now have 6 two-hour therapy sessions booked for free. I'm so happy. Thank you for all the replies and suggestions. I'm so appreciative. When I had a kidney stone, I was asked, "Why did you come to the ER? Why didn't you take Tylenol or something? This is a waste of my time." He made me cry. My ex used to tell me that I was a waste of resources all the time because I'd constantly be making doctor's appointments to figure out what was wrong. He felt pretty bad when I told him I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease a couple of years later. My doctor suggested that I have a baby because my nether regions were too tight and causing discomfort during the deed. Yeah, sure, I'll blast out a screaming ham and see if that increases my pleasure. As a doctor, I've got to tell you something that not many people are willing to admit. About 10 to 15% of all health professionals I've met during my time in school are just awful human beings who don't belong in medicine. They lie, cheat, and just don't care about people. On the flip side, you have about 15% of some of the greatest doctors you've ever met who follow up with you and care for you like you're their own family. 70% just fall somewhere in the middle. So the truth I'm getting at is that being a doctor isn't just the pursuit of those that care for others, but a representation of how our society is as a whole. This wasn't psychologically hurtful necessarily, but the most terrifying thing I've ever been told. "We're going to have to defibrillate you and we don't have time to sedate you." They rolled the crash cart with paddles into my room and I said, "Get that thing the frick away from me," and I almost cried. My mum was in the room with me and was absolutely hysterical. Thankfully, a cardiologist was able to look at my EKG in the nick of time and determined my heart rhythm was stable enough for me to just be transferred to a room for further evaluation without defibrillation. When I was 21, I went to a doctor for a checkup. The doctor asked me to lift my shirt, and I did. He immediately says, "Ugh," and makes a look of disgust on his face. I was an idiot and was gaining weight too quickly. Due to this, I had stretch marks. I've lost the weight and I'm a normal weight now, but I still can't shake that moment. This was 8 years ago. When I was just a little kid, my mum took me to the dentist and he was stabbing above and under my tongue and the inside of my cheeks with the tool that dentists use to clean your teeth and remove plaque, and he said, "If you cry, I'm going to start over." I started going to a dentist that had come highly recommended by a few different people. When I asked him about the possibility of straightening my front teeth, he said, "Well, you'll never be on the cover of Vogue, but I think we can help you out." I stopped going to him a few appointments later when he got mad at me for telling him that the filling he did months ago still really hurt. Okay, so I felt like the fear that a lot of kids have of dentists was just associated with their sharp tools and the vulnerability of the position, but now we've had a few in a row who seem like genuinely horrible, scary people. I don't know that this will help anyone with the fear of those particular medical practitioners, but at least we can say that now I understand your fear. To my wife, about 8 weeks pregnant at an oncologist office after a gynecologist saw a polyp she wanted someone to look at. The doctor said, "You need to have a hysterectomy immediately." We asked, "Shouldn't we wait until the biopsy results come back?" Doctor said, "No, in my opinion, if you want to live, you need to have a hysterectomy immediately." Turns out it was benign. Discoloration is normal for Pacific Islanders during pregnancy. The butthole got the results from biopsy the next day, and we weren't told the results until the following week. We waited. Our son is almost 16 now, and we never saw that doctor again. We knew that she received the biopsy results the next day because the mother-in-law was a doctor also, and the pathologist who did the biopsy ended up being a friend. Well, what are you going to do if your boyfriend would rather you had a larger chest? This was said by the doctor to 15-year-old me. I was getting a consultation for a chest reduction because sporting G-cup was a fricking nightmare. Still got the reduction, no regrets. The doctor said, "I can tell you're incredibly sick by your skin." I looked in the mirror. "Oh no, I always look like this. No, really, it's grey and sallow and the heavy dark circles under your eyes. You look clearly very unwell." "Really, I swear I always look like this without makeup." I really did look exactly how I do on a daily basis. Apparently, deathly. I should add that I was in A&E at the time due to a kidney infection. I'm now totally fine, but I still look exactly as I did that morning at 4 a.m. Not to me, but to my mum. The doctor said, "Oh, just let him hide in the bathroom." I hid in the bathroom when I got really bad headaches that turned out to be due to a brain tumor. The doc must have assumed I was tickling my pickle or something. Hiding in a bathroom is common for people who get migraines, FYI. The doctor, glancing at my nether regions, "You have herpes." "But I've never done the deed." "Oh, stop crying. I diagnose this all the time. It's pretty common. But aren't you at least going to do a test?" "Fine, but it's going to hurt and it's going to show exactly what I've said." It was, indeed, an allergic reaction to a medication. Me, with my pants down, getting checked for a hernia. "Are you able to get hard?" That is me hard." And for those of you asking why you need to get your rigidity checked for a hernia exam, you don't. The doctor was asking if I was able to get one, since a hernia can affect your genitals, and the doctor was just checking. I went to the doctor's office as a child because I was terribly ill and throwing up. The doctor asked if school exams were coming up. I said, "Yes." And she simply said, "That explains it," and then she rolled her eyes. I had to take my son to the ER when he was 2 because he was having trouble breathing. The ER doc said he most likely had asthma, so she gave us an inhaler. Flash forward to 3 days when we go to have his follow-up with his pediatrician. Dr. Donkey goes, "So, he saw this ER doctor once in his life and you trusted her to make a lifelong determination that your son has asthma. That's pretty ridiculous." 6 months later, after 3 more ER visits with my son being unable to breathe, and Dr. Donkey says, "Looks like I owe you an apology. Turns out your son quite likely does have asthma." I mean, I'm surprised he apologized at least. New doctor took my height measurements and jots them down before issuing me a very casual, "Tall for a woman. I am a bearded man." I came in for something totally different and she commented on my stretch marks on my hips and around my chest. I was around 17 years old and I'd gotten them when I hit puberty because I'd developed so much in a short amount of time. I explained this to her and she had a whole dialogue with herself about her originally thinking it would have been because I used to be fat. And after my explanation, just lamenting about how sad it was for me that I'd had to live my entire life with a body like that. I changed doctor the next day. At about 3 months pregnant, I started spotting. Spent about 10 hours at the hospital, lots of ultrasounds down there, lots of diagnostic testing. Nothing they can do. They tell me to go home and wait to miscarry. I was a wreck. It was now late, dark and rainy outside, but I don't have a way to get home because my hubby is at work with our only car. We were very young and poor. The doctor says the nurses have taxi vouchers they can give me to get home. I go to the nurses' station, ask for a taxi voucher, and the nurse says, "We only give taxi vouchers to women who have living babies. If you take anything away from this, please let it be the fact that young people sometimes need a little help navigating life." This nurse's one comment caused me years of being afraid to ask for things, for fear of not only being turned down, but also humiliated. In short, try not to be such a jerk. It was suggested to me that I'd confused a panic attack for a seizure, and to clarify, this was my first grand mal seizure. My father had them prior, and my mother witnessed both him having one and myself having mine. According to her, it was identical. I even hit all of the textbook marks of having had an epileptic seizure, from the memory loss to the post-tictal fatigue. The emergency room doctor didn't run any tests, or examine my family history of epilepsy. He simply noticed the anxiety disorder in my medical history and assumed that I was just having a panic attack, and wrote it off as my only issue being that I'd hit my head. Talking to my psychiatrist later about the incident, he confirmed based only on my account, corroborated with my mum's details where I couldn't fill in, that I'd definitely had a seizure, and he sent the orders for further testing himself. He also couldn't refrain from saying, "What the F is wrong with this doctor?" I'm glad that at least one of my doctors took me seriously. How do parents of gold diggers feel about their kids' relationships? I'm an older brother. I finished school, got a job, got married, bought a house, and had kids. My parents are kind of average about me. They're proud of my family, but feel I didn't reach my earning potential. We got some inheritance from my grandmother, and I used it to modernize my house and buy a car. My sister finished school, got a job, started screwing her boss, moved into his house, got a promotion, splashed half of her inheritance on holidays and clothes, and the other half on a sports car, because she doesn't need a mortgage deposit now that she has a boyfriend with his own flat. My dad literally called me to tell me how proud he was of her buying a sports car all on her own. It would have been hilarious if it didn't highlight my parents' messed up values and complete blindness to their daughter's dependency on her butthole boss/boyfriend. I haven't seen the guy for a few years, but an old friend of mine started out as a gold digger with his girlfriend. He started dating her 4 years ago because he found out that she was rich. The dude came from a broken home with some really messed up parents. He also had ADHD as well as a couple of other learning disabilities. Quit high school in grade 11, but started dating her shortly before that. Her dad was filthy frickin' rich, as he had a lot to do with the mines in the area. A CEO in a huge mining town. He was seemingly mooching at first, didn't go to work, didn't do anything but drink and do substances with his girlfriend. More than once I heard that the father was going to kick him out, but was persuaded by his little girl not to. He eventually falls for the girl and not for the money and decides to take it upon himself to change. Out of nowhere, he says, "I want a job, I don't care what it is," to the girl's dad, and her dad puts him to work. Now, when I knew him, he was famous for his work ethic in intensive labor jobs. Dude was like the freaking Energizer Bunny. He worked his butt off, earned his promotions, and went back and finished high school, completed 2 trades, and the 2 of them bought a house together. To my knowledge, he rarely drinks and hasn't touched substances since he started working. I was pretty surprised because when I went to school with him, he caused nothing but trouble. Cousin is a gold digger. She was actually taught to be one by her mother, who married a very hardworking and self-made successful man, but wasn't quite up to her own dreams. When my cousin was in college, she needed a new car, so she went to the dealership, flirted with the salesman, banged him for a week, and got a loaded new car at his own inside cost, then dumped him the next day. That was pretty par for the course. Car salesman to himself? Yep, still got it. And ladies and gentlemen, we're back on topics that make the narrator despair at the state of humanity. Don't be like this woman. Other way round for me, I'm a 21-year-old girl and my father is a gold digger. He's on his 3rd wife, who's a rich, former antiques dealer. They go on annual 6 to 10 month holidays in various continents, staying in 5-star hotels the whole time. They live in a penthouse overlooking Sydney Harbour, including the Harbour Bridge and Opera House. All of my brothers work constantly for everything they have. I'm a uni student who works 6 to 10 shifts a week at a pub, and I live in a semi with my mum, with a mortgage that's like twice as much as the bloody house is worth. Honestly though, I'm glad he found a rich wife. Means I won't have to take care of him when he's dying. My aunt and uncle were cash flow rich. Tons of cash, spent it all, no savings. So they looked really rich, but literally didn't have a penny. Their irresponsible behavior rubbed off on their 2 daughters. Got ridiculous degrees and then glamour jobs that didn't pay. Daddy wrote them a check every month to cover the difference. They dated male models who were as broke as they were. Then one day, Mummy and Daddy had to file for bankruptcy and the daughters were informed they were being cut off. For good. No problemo. They bought tiny bikinis and met 2 lawyers the next day, and each one married the lawyer they met. One lawyer was bald, the other fat. From male models to that. How does Mum feel about the daughters? Brags about how successful their husbands are at every chance and how they're living this fabulous lifestyle. One lawyer was bald and the other fat, from male models to that. Did you just bust out a freestyle? One of my college friends was always open about wanting to find a rich guy to take care of her. She signed up for a dating site focused on wealthy older men looking for young attractive women. About a month after signing up, she met a guy through the site and went on a few dates. She was 21 and he was in his mid-40s. This would have been about February of that year. In March, he bought her a new Mercedes, and by the end of April had leased a brand new condo in Toronto for her, so she could be closer to him. She moved into the condo on the 1st of May. By November, she announced she was pregnant and they got married in the following spring, while my friend was 7 to 8 months pregnant. The kid is almost 2 now, and they legitimately seem like a happy married couple. She loves not having to work and spends as much time as she can at her parents', also fairly wealthy cottage. And her husband was on the website looking for a trophy wife to spend his money on, so there's an understanding between them. But from day one, she had the opinion of, I'm attractive and have a forward fashion sense, and this is what I want in life, which she found and fulfilled. She still keeps up her appearance as a stay-at-home wife, and they're always out at fancy dinners. I respect the crap out of both of them for knowing what they wanted and being mature about it. Sounds like a win-win for everybody in this case. I've definitely known guys who are pretty open about wanting a trophy wife. It is. There are so many relationships like this in Greenwich. It's like there was a freaking factory somewhere putting them together. It worked so well for them. Wife and husband don't love each other per se, but she's pretty and agrees to stay pretty, and he's rich and agrees to stay rich. Boom. Baby-making city. I'm not a gold digger, but my Chinese mother keeps telling me about the rich Asian girls who move to Cali and tries to get me to hook up with one. I don't see myself being happy with someone I have nothing in common with, though. Funny, my Taiwanese mother keeps telling me to watch out for the gold-digging mainlanders that just want a passport and half my assets. Good friends of mine, a bit older than me, a brother and sister. Sister is a gold digger for sure. She's on her 4th marriage to a millionaire. They came from humble beginnings. The dad owns his own business, but is very middle of the road, middle class. The parents help the brother out a lot with money, and the sister constantly talks crap about him because of it, considers him a leech on their parents. Of course, the brother resents the sister for never having worked a day in her life, but vacations in Europe once a month. Thought I would answer because it's an interesting dynamic to have witnessed. People are very harsh in their judgment of who they consider gold diggers. It feels quite ridiculous sometimes to be the older sister-in-law to a gold digger. I'm older than her by 10 years, yet she gives me life lessons on a regular basis. For example, when she feels like she hasn't had a good day, she calls and says, money doesn't buy happiness. Tease me the frick off, because she has no idea what it's like to have real problems, like getting ready to lose your home or worrying that you're going to have to feed your kids that day. She married a guy 15 years older so that she could sit on her butt and shop. She has a huge house and no responsibilities. I'm not a jealous person. I'm happy for her if she'd just stop talking bullcrap about how hard she has it when she knows very well that her brother and I aren't doing well financially. She's also a bragger, constantly throwing it in my face like, come and see my new car, isn't it awesome? We're going away for the weekend, too. Can you babysit? Look at the pictures of this exotic place we're going. I can't wait. And I'm sitting there like I haven't taken vacation since my honeymoon. She knows this. I don't really blame her though. She's completely unaware of anyone else other than herself. Really. She doesn't do it for meanness, she's just dense. Yeah, marrying someone for their wealth and ease of life might be okay if both sides are aware of it, but then choosing to whine about your rich person problems and giving life lessons to your less well-off friend is a real crapbag move. Don't forget your roots, people. It's a job that takes time to perfect. It's not like the old days when you just keep shoveling pay dirt into the trommel until you find a nice streak. Sadly, the bygone days of hitting glory hole after glory hole just don't happen anymore. Most companies go bankrupt the very first year, and if you don't adhere to the strict environmental regulations, you could be kicked off a site at a moment's notice. Honestly, I'd rather have my daughter just find a nice rich doctor and become a housewife, but that's not her style. She always played with her brother's Tonka trucks. The Yukon is in her blood. Her grandfather was a gold digger too. If you marry for the money, you're going to earn every penny. Not sure where I heard that saying, but I think it's great. My ex was a gold digger. He couldn't handle that I'm happy not being filthy rich. I'm comfortable, that's enough. He left for a rich girl and then left her for a richer girl and married her. He's already cheated. I dodged a bullet. Isn't it more like the bullet took a turn? I think it's at least somewhat likely that most parents of gold diggers never thought that much about their children's lives, ever. This makes sense. An ex of mine used to complain about her dad, a doctor who never had time for her. When I was dating her, I found out that her ex was 25 years older than us and had founded and sold a company for tens of millions of dollars. She currently is not working and lives at her family's beach house. This will probably get buried, but I'll post it anyway. I'm not the parent, but the child of a gold digger. My dad was educated exclusively at private schools and elite Ivy League education. He got his master's in finance by age 24. He's from a politically connected family and could be making millions on Wall Street. Instead, he took much lower paying jobs in order to help raise me and my brother. My mum has her degree in art history. She dumped her previous fiancé and met my dad while celebrating that she'd dumped her old flame. They got married, and within 9 years they were divorced. I constantly heard them fight about how my father wouldn't give her some spending money. He repeatedly told her that if she'd like to spend money, that she had a degree that she could earn her own with. This was not acceptable to her, so they got divorced. Within 2 years, my mum was remarried to a doctor and quit the job she had since doctors' wives don't work. Within 3 months, the marriage fell apart. Throughout my upbringing, my mother constantly beat it into me and my brother's skull that you should always have the finest things, never settle. She would always make comments in private about how people didn't always look their finest. This was in spite of the fact that she refused to work a job that was beneath her. To my mum, how something makes her look is infinitely more important than anything else. Her new fiancé is awesome and he's the VP of a branch of banks. She spins this as, he's the VP of a bank. She would always brag about where her husbands, at the time, were educated. My brother works in business and she spins this as, he's a consultant who has clients in Manhattan, Toronto, etc. I work at a bakery doing hourly level tasks. She tells her friends, my youngest works as a baker making organic high-end bagels. Despite earning into the six figures, she somehow never has money, yet just bought a new BMW. My mum is both a gold digger and a fricking snob. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I have a brother who tried to be a gold digger. He met a girl in the then AOL chat rooms. She lived in the next county. They got friendly and started to meet together on a friendly face-to-face basis. At one point, she invited him to her home where she lived with her parents. This is when my brother discovers the girl's family is rich. They lived in a giant mansion, lots of acreage, servants, and had a huge game room, complete with pinball machines, video game machines, a jukebox, etc. The girl's father, as it turned out, once owned a company that distributed classic TV shows for syndicated reruns on TV stations all across the country. I say once owned because he had it sold for the sum of $200 million back then, and the girl was an only child. Hence, she stood to inherit everything of her father's someday. My brother was excited, even knowing her only a few weeks, in spite of not being in love with this girl. Behind her back, he was talking marriage and living in the lap of luxury for the rest of his life. How he had made it if he played his cards right. Unfortunately for my brother, the girl was of a very liberal persuasion. She had no respect for herself, cheating on one boyfriend with another and another. Even more unfortunate for my brother, he wasn't able to get in on any of that action with the girl. She was sleeping with every other boy except for my brother. He couldn't get himself out of the friend zone. He was the only one who couldn't get himself out of the friend zone. On one occasion, one of the girl's boyfriends made an unannounced visit to this girl at her home. Her family naively and innocently cheerfully directed him upstairs where the girl was. He went upstairs to the girl's bedroom and walked in on her going down on some other guy, the both of them completely in the naughty. The boyfriend, in a rage, grabbed the stalker's guy, grabbed him out of the room, and tossed him down the stairs. The family was shocked to see this unclothed guy come tumbling down the stairs into the room with them. Anyway, over a few months' time, my brother and this girl drifted apart to the point where they never saw each other or conversed online again. He watched his dream of being rich fade into the sunset. I don't know where that girl is today or what happened to her. How is he her boyfriend, but was still in the friend zone? I'm quite amazed you've made that douche nozzle sound like the victim. Good job, that's a skill. Yeah, I don't get it. It sounded like he wasn't even dating her. He met her at a beauty salon and was interested in her type of purse. That should say something. He's happy that she has an ample backside and knows that she's dated others that are well known. I'm worried that she is spending his money on cosmetic surgery when she should be buying toys for their kids. I want them to get a prenup. It's something that he needs to have. He started out as a dishwasher, got promoted to janitorial, and then to fry cook. He worked his way to a Mercedes, but I'm afraid that he would just have traded her up for some other girl anyway. Yep, that seems like an arrangement that could very well end in tears for one or the other person sooner or later, but adding kids to the mix makes it a little sadder. There's an entire town called Wellesley, Massachusetts, and its neighbor Weston, Massachusetts, where all couples are made of rich guys who marry gold diggers/trophy wives. If you have a chance to be there, it's hysterical to watch. So self-absorbed and so self-centered. I'm sure there are other places like that in the US, but that's the one I know. I have a family who lived there, and it's so true. My aunt, a doctor, married another doctor. She's the absolute minority there, and people simply cannot understand why she'd choose to have a career when she could just benefit from her husband's without doing any work. Mind-blowing. You know, I'd rather they leached off someone rich than me. The talentless bums. My boss is extremely wealthy and is constantly dating young girls who are obviously gold diggers. Not very attractive guy pushing 60 who refuses to date anyone over 35. We all at the office recognize it and think, to ourselves of course, that it's sad and borderline pathetic. However, he's happy with what he does and loves the attention, so we all just go with the flow. I think it's obnoxious and think very little of his girlfriends, but whatever, it's his life and his money, and if that's how he wants to spend it, he can be my guest. I'm sure I can comment on behalf of my mother. The one time I dated someone with a good job, $100K a year, she was thrilled I'd found the kind of person she had prayed and hoped for. Someone who could take care of me. She has the opinion that I'm a little too lofty and in over my head for the real world, despite having always had a practical plan for myself, studying hard to graduate high school early, putting myself through college, always working a full-time job, if not two, to keep myself funded. Only once has she helped me financially. $600 I never even asked for. But this guy must be 100% a good catch because he bought her a new toaster when hers broke, and an expensive radio she wanted for Christmas, i.e. the trickle-down economy. What takes care of me will benefit her. Mutual friend to both parties. I went to high school with the boyfriend and know the girlfriend from a mutual friend. They start dating because she was a rebound for him, and he was willing to take her crap. Guy proposes last year and she denies him because she thinks she can do better. I know her sister and that's what she told me. Fast forward a year when he got another job and is in the middle of buying his first house and is doing better, she all of a sudden wants a ring and her name on the mortgage. All our mutual friends think she's pulling a scumbag move because she definitely wasn't going to stay with him before. Apparently the mum is putting her up to this, and the boyfriend is not enjoying buying his first house because he realizes now what a succubus he's dating. My ex is, or was, a gold digger. When her mum told me that she didn't think I could afford her daughter, it teed me off, but then I realized what the mum was really trying to tell me. Rich guys who are smart keep a low profile and never reveal their money until they're sure that the woman is sincere and not gold digging. There was a reality show about princes from foreign countries who came to America looking for a wife. They pretended to be regular schmoes until the right girl came along. One guy from India lived in a palace, and I mean with a capital P. He had over 100 servants just to maintain the place. I didn't see the end of the show, but I understand the sentiment. With the way divorce courts in America work, a stupid rich guy who isn't careful is going to be writing a check with a lot of zeros in it. Brother of a guy who married a gold digger. I pretty much know what mum thinks about the mess, though. My brother is an MD, very highly regarded, extremely highly paid. He did the classic marry a nurse thing. She barely put up with our mother and I, his only family, while dating. Once married, she turned into a psycho B-word from hell towards us. She's made his life miserable, but they have kids together, so he stays with her. He's put her through a couple more degrees because she didn't want to do nursing anymore, but wanted to do something else. Of course, she doesn't actually bother to use the degrees for anything, so it's a total waste of money. She does nothing but sit around the house all day, doesn't take care of it, but they have a maid so the house isn't a wreck. My mother and I both feel really sad for him. We're hoping that once the kids get old enough, he'll dump her sorry butt. Also hoping the kids don't turn out to be train wrecks. The older one has some serious anxiety problems, probably from her mum being a constant screaming B-word, but at least she can get free psych meds, so she's got that going for her. Mum has set up trusts for the kids and put in clauses preventing the psycho B-word from ever having any form of control over them or benefiting from them. So the kids will also be able to pay for their psychiatric care when they're out on their own, even if everything else goes to heck. Not a gold digger, but my mum is. To give you an idea, my biological dad was a World War II vet, loaded out the wazoo, boats, houses, businesses, everything, who was married to another woman when I was conceived. I'm 27, and she's on her third husband right now. A sweet 92-year-old man who bought her 2 cars, a house that was $250,000, and pays her bills so she doesn't work. This includes the $800 a week treatments for her dog. My sister sugared for a while, which I suppose is a form of gold digging. Everyone found it gross, including me. Now that I finally understand no matter how hard I work, I'll never not be poor, I'm considering it myself. I don't have the stomach for it. It's not the screwing the old guys part. I actually don't have much reaction to that at all. It's that there's a whole lot about it basically play acting as what every horrible man on earth expects a woman to be, and I just can't fake that. It's gross for one thing, obviously, but it's actually a lot of work being that kind of woman when it doesn't come naturally to you. Sugar babies earn every penny of that money tolerating these stupid, annoying old men. I suspect I went to school with many gold diggers. I went to an expensive private high school, so I suspect my former classmates are used to a certain lifestyle. I have them on Facebook, and I've seen 5 of those girls marry much older gentlemen. I want to believe there's more to the relationship, but they're fairly attractive, and their husbands are much, much older. Their wedding pictures, however, are quite pretty. I used to be friends with this girl. She kind of had ugly duckling syndrome. She was cool to be friends with, but she just wasn't someone you'd want to date. She was really into sports and kind of one of the guys. About 6 months after high school, she turned 18. Then she had this great boyfriend. All of the girls talked about how awesome he was and how he had a pool at his house, had a couple of nice cars, etc. We all go to this party at this guy's house, and we're hanging out around the pool, and this guy in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, comes out and starts talking to us. I thought it was her dad or something. She walks up to him and sticks his hand in the back of her bikini bottoms, and she playfully tries to pull away, but they make out. Pretty mind-blowing. Turns out this guy just retired from the Marines and was her dad's commanding officer. Next, all of her friends are hooking up with military retirees. I think him and her got married a couple of years later. My boyfriend's sister is 100% a gold digger and daddy's little girl. She married into a wealthy family at 25, divorced him, ka-ching, then married his best friend who was independently, and much more, wealthy. I guess she had to change her plans after her lucrative philosophy degree didn't work out. My niece married a guy she met at high school because his family was loaded. His dad died not too long ago and they inherited $272 million. I can't say I'm pro-gold digging, but damn. Who is that guy or girl that you work with? In my office, it's the "I took the liberty" guy. You come back from lunch and your desk is cleared of the project you had been working on. You run to the bathroom and find your freshly poured coffee replaced with your washed, empty mug. As you dare to say, "What the hell?" he comes around the corner of your cube. "I took the liberty of straightening up your work area," and gleefully moves on to ruin someone else's afternoon. This can also be called the Helperton. That's when you go into his office and take the liberty of turning every single thing upside down. Work with a woman who repeats, "Having fun yet?" almost every hour of the shift. Does she also say, "Another day in paradise," and TGIF, hump day? There is this one man in the office, I'll call him Tim. Tim is a very elderly and angry man, known for this woman's cardigan he wears every day, as well as his many heated conversations, of which the snippets are pure gold. Last week, out of the blue, he proclaims he was up to his knees in blood while on a phone call. Yesterday he said he would rather be doing blow down the streets of New York. One of my favorites included, "Sometimes in life you're the chip, sometimes you're the dip. I love and fear Tim." Detox caseworker here. I work with that girl who talks about her failing marriage, how much she hates her kids, and how much she hates working where she works. She's a very odd person. One day she loves her husband and talks about how much of a god he is, yet she hates her marriage. She talks about what little SOBs her kids are, yet she wants another one, making it 6 children. Lazy as frick, and she's that girl at the yearly Christmas party where she's the only one that goes over her limit and starts spilling secrets people have told her. Not to anyone's surprise, she's gotten many of her coworkers to hate her guts upon walking in the door. Why do social services workplaces always hire the crazies? Does someone in HR say, "Oh yeah, you came to the interview with mismatched shoes and a transformer in your hair, you're caseworker material"? Trust me, I'm a caseworker, no one wants this job. It's hard as frick and emotionally taxing. We have insane turnover, leading to some questionable hires. For some reason, social workers are enshrined in my mind as being very level-headed, if bureaucratic and dull people. Maybe that's Hollywood influencing me. So there are nutters among them, I guess, judging by those last posts. My boss asked me what my Christmas plans were. I told him I'm Jewish. He, in all seriousness, asked me if I would be more comfortable in accounting. Do you work for Michael Scott? Is he Jewish? That sounds like something any number of funny Jewish guys I know would kill to deadpan. A salesman who occasionally comes through and hassles us. The first time he asked what I was working on, I didn't realize what he was up to. I thought he needed help with something, and of course, I'm glad to help. He keeps asking things like, "You're not busy. You don't have anything going on?" It seemed odd how many times he asked, but still, I'm thinking he wants help, is trying to be polite, and is worried he's interrupting me. I get started on what he asks, and he leaves. Next thing I know, my boss arrives asking why I have nothing to do. Thankfully, my boss is pretty cool, so nothing bad happened. The salesman is not our boss or even in our department, yet he occasionally comes through checking on us and asking things like, "Why does that job take 2 people?" He's such a prick. If he was doing his job, he shouldn't have time to nitpick. He's trying to make himself look good by making everyone else look bad. Unfortunately, he will probably end up being middle management. Most bosses love suck-up snitches and don't realize the rat doesn't do their own job efficiently. There's a dude that watches videos of God knows what and screams along to them. I think he's watching wrestling or maybe boxing or something, because every now and again he'll just shout, "Oh, put him on a body bag!" Or, "Oh, Queen, B!" and start dusting off his hands loudly and laughing. It's fricking bizarre. The guy that I work with has only one eye and can drive a forklift better than I ever could with 2. Great guy, too. But how does he wink at cute girls while he's forklifting? Every single day, he comes in and spews some bullcrap. He's just invested another $175K in some property. He just had a genius moment on the way into work and will now be able to solve the energy crisis. He's just met some famous smart person, like Elon Musk, who said he was the smartest person they'd ever met. This isn't occasionally, this is all the time. Literally every single day. You can't even talk with this guy. It's so irritating. He follows me everywhere, and you try to have some normal conversation and he just spews more bullcrap. I tried talking with him once and said, "Well, my car has this thing going on with it. I may need to take it to the shop." He replies with, "Oh, that reminds me. My boyfriend is having the Lamborghini dealer come over tonight. He's having a midlife crisis, but work just gave him another $2 million bonus because he's such an amazing architect." Frick this guy. Start actively perusing these conversations. Ask for him to expand on the details of the story to see how ridiculous they get. For instance, you could have asked him, "Oh, your boyfriend's an architect. Has he worked on anything I'd recognize?" To which you would likely get an outlandish answer, which you could make the person expand upon again. It's like a game. Oh, he always comes up short when we ask for proof. He kept going on once about his lake house at Lake Tawakoni, which he put up on an Airbnb. One of the other guys I worked with started bugging him for the link to look it up. He wanted a place to go to, with his wife on a weekend getaway. Crazy coworker comes back and says, "Oh, you couldn't afford it," and says the insurance on the boat rental alone is $3,500 a day. Still never came back with an address. We kept pushing him on it. "Oh, it's booked until October." This was back in the spring. We still haven't gotten an address on that house. One of the guests on Airbnb rented the house and a huge party with 100 plus people, and they broke sinks off the walls and burned the couch on the front lawn. His maid, who he hired to look over the place, called and told him about all the damages. She sent him photos, but when we asked to see them, "Oh, I don't have them on me." Really? Did she send them via UPS? How do you not have photos on you in this day and age? Anyway, we asked about them the next day. Oh, Kevin, his boyfriend, wouldn't let me show them to anyone, and miraculously insurance sent them $45K within 2 days for all the damage. Never seen insurance work that fast before. Someone found his boyfriend's resume online, but he's not an architect. Something similar to interior design, I forget the title, and he had done stuff like he designed the layout of some gas stations. You're going about it wrong. You don't want proof of the story, you want the most outlandish, impossible story you can pull from the guy. This guy gets it. I had a coworker snowboard down a mountain in front of an avalanche after he was launched from a helicopter. That's what I get for trying the bunny slope. Frick you, CB. I put my boogers on the adjustment levers of your chair and then frick up your settings when you're in the bathroom. I'm a waiter, and one of my coworkers is an Italian old man that's so close to retirement that he doesn't care anymore. He pretends to pee into wine buckets by turning his back to the customers and emptying a water bottle into them. He prank calls the restaurant by calling and going, "Go freak yourself," before hanging up. Smokes constantly and is never on time. I love the too close to retirement to care guy. I used to work with one who would answer the phone with, "Hey, what are you up to besides being ugly?" Everyone knew his sense of humor though, and he was much beloved. I work in an office. I have an older lady, 45 to 50, next to me who says, "Awesome sauce," at least 5 times a day. I'm thinking about quitting because of her. Bring a liquor flask to work. Every time she says, "Awesome sauce," yell out, "Woo! There it is!" and take a swig. Pretend like it's normal and never explain why. She'll either stop saying it or you'll get so drunk you stop caring. Either way, mission success. I feel like there's some differing opinion on what constitutes that guy or girl. I honestly just thought it was some kind of weird pervert who constantly turned everything towards their nice interest. Turns out it might just be any sort of weirdo. My old co-worker. I couldn't tell if he was a mad genius or a man-child. I have not and will not meet anyone else in my life who is anything like this guy. He, 1. was so American that he told me he would show up to my birthday party in a Stars and Stripes banana hammock cawing like an eagle. He moved before my birthday, or I think he actually would have. 2. took the fan and some wires out of a recycled PC. He somehow found a D battery somewhere and hooked it up to the wires so the fan would run. He would lightly fan people as they worked, sometimes right in front of our customers. You nice and cool yet? 3. drafted and made a falcon talon on the end of a magnetic tentacle. The talon is a phone holder. He has a patent and is marketing it soon. There's also a version with a monkey tail on the end of a raptor jaw. 4. He put a rubber band ball on a paperclip, then impaled it to the ceiling of the break room. Turned on the strobe function on his phone's flashlight and opened a Pandora Club playlist. Told everyone they deserved a disco party and would shriek when someone started to take it down. 5. hugged an old man who went off on another coworker because he just needs a friend. 6. strategically planned out how to travel from the front of the store to the back using only the rafters. A section of it he needed to turn into a liquid. He drew a diagram. 7. printed a bunch of rebel flags on the store printer and gave them to our black supervisor, saying she needed to hand them out to preserve his heritage. He was Southern and completely sarcastic. 8. printed a banner-sized check made out to him for millions of dollars. Subject was, "Winner for the biggest poop." Plenty more too, I just can't keep them all straight. I miss that guy. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I don't work there anymore, but when I was a delivery driver for a pizza company, there was a guy who just didn't give a frick. The boss had the hots for him, so he got away with so much crap. Never arrived when he was supposed to, always got to go home on time, or early if he wanted, even if we were completely backed up. Whenever he closed, he never cleaned in the back kitchen, so instead of firing him, his shifts got changed to opens. He would take random breaks and play guitar and sing loudly about getting wasted and smoking green herb in the storeroom, loud enough for the customers to hear. At one stage, he even peed on the floor in the room where we made the dough. After a few months, he went on holiday. He never came back, but his name was always on the roster. The stories I have about that place are amazing. I'm thankful I don't work there anymore, but also glad that I did. Worked or trained with a lady once who said bonus in place of any kind of hooray type statement. I just found $1 on the ground. Bonus! I'm taking my girlfriend out on a date tonight. Bonus! I just purchased a delicious beverage from the vending machine. Bonus! I didn't get hurt doing this mildly unsafe task. Bonus! It was getting to be a little much, but she quit very shortly after being hired. I was so thankful. She quits. Bonus! I have an older lady of the same age range as well who says, "Oh, Milanta," all the time. All the time. Thankfully, I don't see her too often since we work in different departments. When I do see her, this inevitably is something she says. I don't get it. How does that phrase become such a crucial part of someone's vocabulary? Oh man, we have the over-opinionated oversharer. We stopped using her real name and now just refer to her as TMI. Hey, did you send that document over yet? Well, I would have if it weren't for the fact that this guy I've been seeing for the past 3 days has this brother who's a total D-bag. Wasn't even considerate of my gluten allergy over the weekend, which really sparked my ADHD, so I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes on Saturday, even though the liberals keep raising the taxes on them, which actually worked out because I lost 3 pounds from not having an appetite. Okay, can you just send it over? This is every conversation. She sounds like she has the most confusing political views ever. Sounds like my coworker. We'll call her Carla. We had a girl transfer to our office last week, and Carla had already told her about the UTI she had, like 4 months ago. I've personally heard or overheard the story about her food poisoning incident at least a dozen times. I don't think anyone needs to hear it was coming out of both ends. Ever? Carla was out sick yesterday after having an allergic reaction to something, so heaven help us today if she returns. See also that time she tried to get something off the top shelf and fell and hit her elbow. The 3 times she's had kidney stones, her 2 UTI infections, food poisoning, the 24 mosquito bites she got on vacation, and a partridge in a pear tree. The guy who eats several hard-boiled eggs every morning for breakfast in an open cubicle environment. The smell is somehow worse on Monday mornings. I used to work with a guy who would only eat 4 hard-boiled eggs for lunch each day. But he'd only ever get through 3 of them, and he'd walk around the office trying to hand people his extra egg. That was the most normal part about the guy, I'm afraid. Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time? Is he perhaps eating 4 dozen eggs? If so, he might just be trying to get large. But beware, once he's grown, that number will jump to 5 dozen eggs. Naturally, he'll become approximately the size of a flat-bottomed river vessel. Whenever he wants to say something, he pauses in the middle of the sentence like he's waiting for you to react to every bit of information. So, my son was watching Netflix, pauses for 4 seconds, eye contact all the time, and he told me to join him. Pauses again, to start watching Jessica Jones. He usually does it with a glass of water and takes a sip during the pauses. I used to work with a guy who would eat those Vienna sausages out of the little can, then slurp the juice in the bottom. No. I cringed so hard at that I think I pulled a muscle in my jaw. There is a special place in hell for people who eat loudly in a busy workplace. I think honestly even hearing the word slurp makes me shudder and gag slightly. But that might just be me being a type A weirdo. I like all of my co-workers. The woman I couldn't stand was HR from corporate. She was here for a week and I could not wait for her to leave. She made sure that we knew she didn't care about me and the other lady, both temporary employees, even though we're likely to be hired. She would not stop talking about how she's single and men were hitting on her in all the countries she had visited on her vacation. She constantly talked about how she's trying to lose weight, but kept eating the fattiest crap I've seen, all while complaining about America's eating habits. She took over our marketing manager's office for the week because she was too lonely in the back area. Sorry, the graphic designer and I are busy working. She would not shut the frick up about shopping. She didn't understand that I don't have extra money to spend. She cooked horrible-smelling fish in the microwave, then proceeded to burn some popcorn later. She kept stealing all of my soft Kleenexes I bought from home. She cancelled our work Halloween party. Good lord, she was unpleasant. Apparently, I live in a TV show and no one told me. When I was in the Air Force, there were plenty of these types of people, but there was one legend who'll outlive them all. Let's call him Vic. Vic was in his late 30s maybe, balding, overweight, annoying, and generally the worst NCO the US Air Force ever saw. Here's a list of his accomplishments. Vic routinely practiced terrible weapon discipline. He would constantly have his weapon pointed at you. He couldn't even clear his weapon to enter the chow hall. A Marine had to do it for him. I had never been so embarrassed to be an airman in all my service. Vic somehow came back to the site with junk every single day. We have no idea where he found it or what half of it was. He once brought back a gigantic Donkey Kong-looking hammer, no explanation for its intended use. Another time he came back with a belt of ammunition that he'd found on the road. Yeah, sure, you know, it's a war zone, people get blown up every day by improvised explosives on the side of the road. Just go pick up something like that. Vic would argue with you about where your hometown is located geographically. Vic was responsible on more than one occasion for complete mission failure. The specifics I can't quite divulge, but rest assured he was brilliantly stupid. Vic could barely speak or write English. He was born in Florida. His ancestors came to this country a couple of 100 years ago. Vic dropped a T-wall, gigantic concrete wall, on a tent with a front loader. Almost killed someone. Vic wore my uniform top back to his barracks, but then later denied the whole thing. Vic was fired from his position twice on 2 separate deployments. Saw him a year later, he had been promoted. This lady at my office has freakishly good hearing and preemptively does weird helpful things for people. Like yesterday, an intern asked one of our agents for the agent's code. Her office is at the other end of the suite, but somehow she heard, wrote down each agent and their code on a post-it, and brought it to the intern's desk. If she overhears someone speaking with service ops about a specific form, she'll quietly email them a copy. Little things like that. People think it's super creepy. I only know this because it's me and I just overheard my coworkers talking about how weird I am. Oh. Maybe you should stop for a week and see what happens. Maybe they'll miss it, or you can be lazier. Don't stop doing what you're doing. Just pipe up and say, "Oh, I have that info for you right here." People will appreciate you without the creep factor ever being added in. My boss leaves notes at my desk for me every so often, ranging from "you look good today" to "I fricking hate you." My personal favorite, he once wrote "love you" on a sheet on my desk, then went to my coworker's cube next to mine, and I could hear him writing something. When he left, the coworker and I both asked, "What did he write on your desk?" and showed each other simultaneously. His said, "You, not so much." Oh man, let me tell you about Hugo. Where to begin? It's holiday party time, and the ice is all frozen into one big chunk. Not to worry though, Hugo is on it. Here's a big rusty hammer borrowed from one of the foresters. Don't worry about using a dirty hammer to break up something you're about to put in your drink. A little iron oxide in your soda is good for the constitution. Am I right? What's that you say? A cake for someone's retirement? How nice! Hugo will cut himself a nice big slice, then lick the frosting off the knife before putting it back in the cake. Yes, we all saw you do that, and yes, we're going to wash the knife. Heck yes, another holiday party. What is this item on the buffet? Will Hugo like it? Guess he had better stick his fork in there to grab a piece to try while standing in line. Oh no, Hugo has a cold. Better go gurgle some water in the kitchen sink, then spit it back out. Oops, he forgot to take a sponge everyone uses to clean their dishes out of the sink first. Oh well, better just leave it in there. It's all dirty now. Bonus time, I also work with Jacob. One day, a mutual coworker left a salad out on her desk because she had an errand to run during lunch. When she came back, half of the salad was gone. What's this? A note from Jacob? Apparently, the salad looked too good, and he couldn't help himself. Schlepp brings in 2 bags every day filled with his crap, like a bagman. Notebooks, clothes, food, toys, junk. He leaves little bits of paper around, upon which little pieces of his mind spill out, like the third chair from the window. What the frick does that even mean? He writes Doctor Who fanfiction, and we got to read some once. Not good. Smiles and mumbles and never looks anyone in the eye. I think he's gonna kill us someday. Guy openly declared he took the job because he expected it to be nothing but ugly, fat women. He obviously meant it because he couldn't work with any of the more attractive women in the office. Constantly told one that she was too pretty to be smart, and then would switch it up by telling her how stupid she was. Constantly scoffed at anyone who offered him help, and never hesitated to mention that he had a master's degree. Told me, "Don't frickin' argue with me," around coworkers when I corrected him. He was wrong. Had a loud booming voice in an office where voices carry, and would stand in your office saying the most inappropriate things like, "I like to bang pregnant girls because they can't get pregnant." Came in one day after being at an adult club all night and walking to work after his car broke down with a sunburn on one half of his body. He didn't hesitate to tell everyone exactly what had happened. A girl was stretching and had her arms extended out, and he, likely purposefully, walked crotch first right into her hand and proclaimed loudly, "Stop touching my Johnson!" Had some neurological issue which caused him to shake a bit, not Parkinson's, pretty regularly, and would compound that by downing no less than 5 cups of coffee before 10 a.m. until he was a total mess. Updated service tickets with very helpful and professional comments like, "Dropped in your queue like it's hot," and "Solved this problem like a boss." When he was finally confronted about the list of transgressions, he confided, "I'm surprised it took them so long to talk to me about it." What's the strangest thing about the UK as an outsider? Saying "Way" when someone falls over. Or drops a glass. People apologizing when passing in front of you at the supermarket. Feels good though. I'm in the UK from Canada. I can't imagine anywhere not apologizing anytime you mildly inconvenience another person. UK here, but my American ex seemed surprised that while "let's go for a pint after work" in the US meant "let's go get a drink and then head home," here in the UK it's more like "let's go get smashed after work." Apparently, you really mean that crap when you say one drink. I was gonna deny that, but it's actually kinda true. I live in New York, and when a friend says, "Wanna grab a beer?" it means 3 to 4 beers at the most. If we're looking to get sauced, we always just say, "You want a drink tonight?" This would be a convo with my other half. Me, "Babe, I'm off out." Her, "Out, yeah, not out, out." "Yeah, babe, just out." "Alright, see you soon." For context, out being a pub or a mate's house for a few, and out being clubs or a 12-hour bender or whatnot. Putting an X at the end of their text messages. I didn't even realize this was a UK thing. I thought everyone did it. Important to note, the levels of affection the amount of kisses provided indicates. X is a casual acquaintance, 2 X's a friend, 3 X's definitely shagging and or in love, 4 X's anything more than 3 X's puts you firmly in the psychopath spectrum in my opinion. There's a guy I work with and his wife sends about 20 X's after every single message, even if it's just like a sentence long. Something's going wrong there. Yeah, the meanings of 1 or 2 are a bit fluid, but if you go for 3, that's definitely a leap beyond basic friendship and courtesy. Now you mention it, a lot of my British friends do this, and I'd never really clicked that it was a common link. Interesting. And I should clarify, despite what a lot of commenters seem to think, I'm not actually British, so I'm being as educated here as any of you are. I just think the names they give to places are so oddly fascinating, like Stoke-on-Trent or Kingston-upon-Thames or Aldermanbury Square. They all just seem so whimsical and full of history. UK place names can tell you so much about the place. The Anglo-Saxons were fastidious with some of the geographical naming conventions, so the form of hill they used can tell you what kind of hill it is, whether it's steep, plateaued, etc. So like Swindon came from a name that meant a plateaued hill with pigs on it. Or you can tell whether Vikings had a prominent presence there. Like all the seaside towns up north that end up B are using an Old Norse name element, and Skegness might once have been a home to a very bearded person because of the Old Norse hweg element. Possibly the skeggy bit could also just be a name. There are some excellent ones in the southwest where I'm from. Budleigh Salterton, Cheriton, Fitzpaine, Westward Ho! The exclamation mark is actually part of the spelling. Lustley Cleave. All of the accents in a relatively small area. I'm a Brit and I live in the Midlands and go to university. I only live, and grew up, 45 minutes from my uni, but everyone from that area sounds completely different from me, and occasionally I'll have a communication breakdown with the locals as we just cannot understand each other's certain terms or slang. The food alters an awful lot too. At uni, I can get oatcakes really easily. They're everywhere, it's bliss, but back home it's difficult to find any. I'm obsessed with British panel shows. I don't know how people over there feel about them, but I'll spend hours on YouTube watching old episodes of Cats Does Countdown and Would I Lie to You? These are just quality comedy for me and far better than all the dumb reality shows on TV here in the States. Panel shows are popular here, but they're seen in the comedy scene as a necessary evil to get popular enough to go on tour. Watch UK Taskmaster if you want to see the greatest show ever made. Alright, this is wildly inaccurate. Every person on those shows will have been touring and doing the circuit for years. As an outsider who does watch a lot of them, it seems like panel shows are viewed as a reliable source of income you get to have when you're already popular. Downplaying everything, like, yeah, that's alright food, when in fact it was an excellent dining experience. It's out of love for the ironic statement. Bit windy in a force 9 gale. You think there's an issue when the house is on fire? You've got red on you when you're covered in blood. Or when things are horrendous. That stiff upper lip. My mate was 30 when she found out that her dad had lung cancer. He deteriorated rapidly while she was pregnant and died just 2 days before her baby was born. I went over to look after the kids so she could deal with the funeral arrangements, etc. When I asked how she was doing, she sighed and said, "I'll admit, I'm not great." She obviously cried, grieved, and talked through her feelings, but when she had crap to be getting on with, she was amazing at powering through what needed to be done. For anyone wanting an insight into British understatement, here's something to keep in mind. In everyday language, not bad means, hey, this is pretty good. It can also mean that something's not actually bad, but not great either. It's down to the tone of voice. Meanwhile, not great means awful in no uncertain terms. For a person to describe themselves as honestly not great or not doing great means their world is out of kilter and they're dealing with an existential crisis which may well haunt them for the rest of their lives and would possibly send others to their knees. Tea and sympathy is required in these circumstances. Using the tube during rush hour as a tourist was like a sci-fi dystopian novel. Everyone was dressed the same and completely silent except for a few people saying sorry to anyone who touched them or that they touched. and nobody laughed when the posh English lady on the intercom kept saying, "Next stop, Cockfosters. Transfer here for Tooting Broadway. Mind the gap." There's actually a reason for this. A lot of dystopian writing was based on English conformity in the world of work. The most obvious examples I can give is Orwell's 1984, where conformity is displayed truthfully among the elitism which still exists in Britain even now. Yep, it's strange being in a country like the UK where we all technically speak the same language, but the subtle differences and new systems make it so alien. And the commuting systems are the peak of it in my mind. Having tea. When I went over to the UK for a holiday, the people who I visited asked me what I wanted for tea. Like an ignorant fool, I replied with rooibos. They were not asking what kind of tea I'd like, apparently. I felt a bit stupid to be honest, but at least I know something new now. Nah, it's all good fun. I love laughing and talking about different terminology and cultures, like chips and crisps, car park, parking lot. Actually, even here people do argue about what tea means. Even bread rolls, buns, cobs. Here in the deep south of England, we use tea to mean dinner. It's just contextual, like no one ever is confused about which tea the person means. I watch a lot of Premier League and thus watch a lot of fan channels on YouTube. I'm amazed at how quickly you guys can pull the most unique insults out of thin air and continue like it's nothing. Lukaku is crap, mate. He couldn't hit water from a boat. Captain, he couldn't lead a pack of ants to a picnic. There's obviously better ones, but I'm not as quick-witted as the Brits, so I'm not exactly doing it justice. But I love your humour and basically everything around football culture. Could fall into a barrel full of breast and come out sucking his thumb was a classic one of these. This is magic. This is how words were originally intended to be compiled. Hate to tell ya, I went to a ton of games a couple of seasons back and we aren't really being witty more than we remember 2 or 3 really solid lines and use them for a variety of players. Plus a big umbrella term for analysis is just calling them wank. Frickin' Ozil, he's frickin' wank, mate. Mesut Ozil in probability isn't actually bad. He's a world-class midfielder and a World Cup winner. However, should he have a bad game, he's thereby relegated to wank until he has a good run of form, which is known as doing alright. If he actually has a good season, he will basically be deified and have songs created about him. See Mohamed Salah for Liverpool the last 2 seasons. Actually, that's something the Terraces, football crowd, does over here that you don't see in America, is songs sung about individual players. They can be good or bad. When I went to see Everton a few years back, the crowd was singing to Tim Howard to the tune of London Bridge is Falling Down. Timmy Howard's got Tourette's, got Tourette's, got Tourette's. Timmy Howard's got Tourette's, frick, crap, wanker. I thought the strangest thing in the UK was the bars and nightclubs with signs saying to not attack paramedics. Unfortunately, all too necessary from what I've heard. For some inexplicable reason, a lot of paramedics have been attacked when trying to help people. I think it's because people fear them getting the police involved if you've got substances on or in you. In reality, paramedics only give a crap what substances you've got so they can try to help you. No use thinking someone is having a heart attack when they really just need naloxone. Such polite insults. I was watching some Brexit crap a while ago, and some fella told another dude that he was screaming across the bar in the most eccentric fashion. American here who's been on and off following Brexit. I love watching the House of Commons and especially Burko. In Congress, there's the idea of order and civility and not talking while someone else is. Over there's a whole lot of rebelling and sass, and I love it. I'm British, and the only insults I ever hear are long lists of things that would get you demonetized on YouTube. I was in Bath yesterday, and some dude, probably in his early 20s, quite posh, in a suit, wandering down the main shopping street, having to stop and recalibrate himself every few steps. It was only about 5 p.m. Nice counterpoint to the tourists and the beautiful 18th century buildings. He's just practicing his silly walk. He was on his way to the Ministry of Silly Walks to get a research grant. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The pub is the most culturally UK place and queuing is the most UK behaviour. Yet there's no queuing for a drink in a pub. It's a mental queue. Everyone knows who at the bar is to be served next. Sorry love, he's before me. Until you get the slag who knows full well he's cutting in front of you and others. The bar staff usually clock who's next anyway and ignore them, or you just have to sort it yourself. Oi mate, not you, and a thumb over to the person you know who is in front of you. As a resident of the Nordic countries, I would contest that queuing is more British than Nordic, especially Sweden. It's like a gosh darn religion over there. I've only been to London, but well-dressed people passed out drunk in alleyways at 11 a.m. Also, the very defined rules about when you can speak to each other. People are very friendly within the bounds of the rules, but literally panic if someone engages with them outside of these bounds. Also, the drinking culture. Just wow. I want to clarify that I mean wow in both a positive and negative sense. A cleaning lady scared out of her mind by 20 drunks in a male bathroom was bad, but being able to drink from a bottle of wine as I wandered around the city with my friend and not have to worry about the cops was fantastic. Alright, now people are writing to me that it's illegal to walk around town drinking, but I will counter that I walked past whole groups of people on the source on the sidewalk, so I guess that if the police were enforcing that one, I guess I was the least of their worries. Okay, more people have written into me, and apparently it's not illegal. Good to know. I gotta say that for the most part, I adore the British. Got to say that as a southerner, this is quite true down here, but as soon as you get up north, everyone is much friendlier and loves a chat. I met a dude from up north the other day, and he said the same thing without me mentioning my thoughts, whether positive or negative. He told me that he was very sorry that my whole perception of the UK had been formed in London. As a Brit, reading all of these stories has been a real treat. It might just be lunchtime beer talking, it's Friday after all, but I've really enjoyed myself. Cheers. Constantly making jokes about pedos. Dark humor in general. One of my mates was chatting up a girl in a pub once, and once he nipped to the loo, I went over and told her she'd better watch him as he was a convicted pedophile. She shot off back to her mates and wouldn't talk to him again. When I told him why, he just laughed and called me the C-word. I'm Portuguese and I lived in the UK for 2 years. The use of cheers confused me so much. When I'm supposed to use it? Is it a thank you? A goodbye? A hello? I'm supposed to reply cheers in return? I know it's probably because of a long shared cultural history and that most people live and die in the same areas they're born, but I don't understand the different stereotypes based on towns, cities, and villages. I'm not talking really big generalities like people in the north are friendlier or people in London are more hurried and fast-paced. I'm not talking about large regional differences. I'm talking stereotypes based on specific, very small places. Well, he was from Derbyshire, collective eye roll, so you know how he was. You know how all those Yorkshiremen of a certain age act. All the heads nod in unison. I grew up in Kent, so I was not familiar with how those chavs from Milton Keynes spoke. Multiple harumphs. I have no frickin' clue what being from a specific small town or village means, but it seems everyone in the UK knows all the different stereotypes and idiosyncrasies of every village in the whole gosh darn country. It's basically a class thing. Everyone thinks the next town over is a crap hole, but if the big city 2 towns over says the same thing, then you all unite against them, and so on. Pull cord switches, mostly in bathrooms. Where I come from, we only have attached to the wall switches, except for maybe some super old lamps. One thing I can't wrap my head around is how people go partying wearing nothing but a shirt or small dress, regardless of the weather, which is often quite cold, especially in, winter. I observe large groups of such people every weekend. They're not even carrying jackets or anything, and they're taking the bus. This would be semi-understandable if they took cabs everywhere and literally didn't spend more than a couple of minutes outside. I've been living in the UK for 5 years, and what still gets me is people saying, "You all right?" instead of "How are you?" For me, the "you all right" makes me think I look sad or sick. It's weirdly accusatory, even though I know it just means "How are you?" We have that in Cumbria too, a whole conversation played out as right. Thank you, and most of the time when they say it to each other, it doesn't even seem to be a question, just 2 people saying all right to each other, not answering the question and moving on to the next part of the chat. Here in Ireland, Dublin anyway, we dropped the "you." We just say "all right," and the reply is also "all right." If you're not all right, you don't mention it. American living in London for a few years now. One of the biggest things is definitely the drinking culture and how much it's embedded in all of society. I thought coming from the States that we drank a lot, but here it's on a different level. It's very common to have a pint or 2 during lunch breaks before going back to work. Pubs are on every corner, and the public drinking laws are astounding for an American. The sense of orderliness and politeness. Brits are amazing, diligent with following the rules. They queue quietly for public transportation, stand on the right, and don't outwardly complain when something goes wrong, though they're the best at tutting under their breath. Keep calm and carry on really is practiced in every part of life here. There's a sense of collectivism that I sometimes find strange when coming from a country that prides itself on individualism. Humor. The British humor relies completely on sarcasm, while American humor is more in-your-face slapstick. They each have their place and time, but sometimes it can feel exhausting to constantly have to unpack British comedy or humor due to its constant push for double entendres, ambiguity, and innuendos. Innuendo. I feel far too British to agree with the above comment and then chuckle at yours. As a Dutch person, the same sense of orderliness really struck me as well. It's like London is insanely crowded hell, though Amsterdam is worse, but everyone is doing their best to make it easier for each other. If the escalator sign says to stand on the left and walk on the right, or vice versa, people actually do what it says. It's amazing. It's great, but it leaves us with incredibly short fuses in cultures that don't have these customs in place. I'm a Brit living in China. I have to drink at least twice the tea I used to in order to recover from my subway journeys. If you would just bloody wait for me to alight the train, there will be ample time for you to board without having to push into me. So I'm British and I have an American friend I compare cultural notes with. One of my weirdest was when I mentioned finding a postbox from Victoria's reign. She was like, "You mean your mailboxes carry information about the current leader of your country?" To which I replied, "Of course they do, it's the Royal Mail." Postboxes note the E, 2 and R and crown at the base, indicating it was placed in Elizabeth II's reign. The royal family. Are they just mascots of the UK, or do they hold any political power? Officially, the Queen does hold some political power, but she chooses not to exercise it, as she's required to be politically neutral. This is mostly relevant when it comes to passing legislature. Officially speaking, it requires the monarch's consent before a new piece of legislature is confirmed, but no monarch has actually declined to do so in more than 3 centuries. There are some other parts of the process of government that require her consent or participation, but these are mostly ceremonial, such as the opening of each parliamentary session, think of these like school semesters, or the official appointment of the Prime Minister. In most other respects, they do act as mascots, though many of them also manage various aspects of the Crown Estate, which involves managing businesses and charity outreach programs, maintaining property and land, etc. Many of them also hold, or have held, positions in the military, though I think most British Prime Ministers have said that they really valued talking things over with the current Queen at their weeklies, as she was such a confidential, neutral, experienced and pretty wise and level-headed person, except for when it comes to her children. I suspect Charles, if he doesn't pop his clogs before Liz does, will be much more of a pain in the arse. Hi, I'm from Germany and have spent some time in the UK. The one thing that was weird but nice was that people are polite when it comes to using public transportation. One time, the most annoying teenagers on the bus I was on stood up and left their seats as soon as 2 old ladies got on the bus. I find fascinating the current hatred and rivalry between the different countries of the UK. The Scottish government seems to despise the central UK government, which is England-dominated. In fact, it's really weird how even the Welsh, and to some extent the Republican Northern Irish, resent the domination of England in the UK as a whole. Weirdly enough, the English don't have their own devolved parliament, so the UK legislates for the whole of Britain as well as England-specific issues, giving rise to the West Lothian questions. Just a century ago, it seemed that whether Scottish or Welsh, everyone had no problem with being called British back then, when the British Empire was at its peak. Except the Irish, of course. Well, I studied there for a year, and I've been there countless times before, and after, I'm astounded at how much junk food there is everywhere. The first thing I was told when I moved there was, "Look out for chavs." I didn't know what chavs were, but not even 5 minutes after I arrived there had been 2 chavs fighting outside the supermarket right next to where I lived, with blood splatters still on the pavement when I walked to the supermarket. A little bit later, I learned quickly that you needed to avoid them at most cost. What I found fascinating was that the chavs could be any age, young or old. But the weirdest thing for me with the UK is that for a city to get the status of a city, it needs to have a cathedral. So for a big town like Middlesbrough, they can never become a city unless this is changed, and there are over 200,000 people living there. Hey, pal, sounds like you were at the Teesside Uni. My own hometown, no less. Chavs are a scary type, but they're also quite a complex social group. Not all are equal. Fun fact, Middlesbrough does have a cathedral. It's been rejected for what we call devolved city status since 2012, largely due to mayoral and councillor arguments. UK local politics deserves its own thread. To be a city in the UK, you need either historically to be regarded as a city from before the 12th century or have been conferred city status by the government. Originally, the title of city was likely to be given to places with cathedrals, as they would be important settlements, but it's never been a prerequisite. I live near Brighton and Hove, which was granted city status in the 21st century, but doesn't have a cathedral.
Therapists of Reddit. What was your "you must be kidding me" moment? Some of these are gross. Doctor I used to work with told me about a woman who tried to kill herself, so they put her in a safe room. She then proceeded to try an overdose on water, which he told me is possible, but really hard to do. A client was going to probate court and thought he'd dress up by putting a non-slip sock on his collar as a tie. Trying to be supportive, I told him, "Nice tie," to which he replied, "It's not a tie, it's a sock, stupid." One client of mine bites and eats his fingernails. Gross, but not unheard of. Then I learned he stores his fingernails in a box in his room to save them for a snack later. A little grosser, but he's about 9, so I'm hoping he will grow out of it. What finally made me want to vomit was learning that when anyone in his family clips their nails, fingers or toes, they give him the clippings to add to his box. So when he's eating nails from the box, they could belong to his mother, father, or siblings. Yes, I've addressed the parents about enabling this behavior, but it is still happening. Edit, thank you for all your concerns for my client. I'm aware that it seems like pica or some sort of nutrition deficiency, and for all I know, it could be. I'm a behavioral therapist and not qualified to professionally recommend medical treatments to the family. I do know his parents have taken him to several doctors for multiple different tests for disorders, so this could have been addressed and they just chose not to disclose the information to me. I used to work with children that have autism and Down syndrome, which means a lot of play therapy. I had my moment when one of my clients wanted to sit on my lap while we practiced reciting animal cards, followed with their corresponding noise. Forgot what animal noise I made that made him laugh so much that he ended up peeing on me from the laughter. That night was also date night. Intake clinician here. What brings you in today? I'm here for adult image addiction. At this point, not the weirdest thing I've heard. Let's go with that. Okay, tell me about it. I watch it 3 times a week, for 15 minutes or so at a time. My girlfriend said I'm an addict and forced me to come in. I see lots of very extreme cases, but this was so minor that it made me stop for a moment. I sent them to couples counseling. Just today, I conducted a threat assessment on the first grader who told his teacher he wanted to stab himself with a knife and die. Upon further questioning, he revealed that he and Dad watched The Walking Dead together, and last time on the show, he saw 2 people stab themselves to death because, quote, they didn't want to get eaten by the zombies. Why are you even watching that show with a 6-year-old? Had a client who we found out was storing his own poop under his bed. He would then eat his poop for a snack. Edit, so I guess I should have added why he did this. First issue, he thought he was an alien, so eating his poop had a few benefits in his mind. First benefit, we could not study his poop. Second benefit, he felt that alien poop had nutrients he could not get from our food. He would eat normal food, but we found out he felt Earth food was poison and alien poop fixed that. Third benefit, alien poop is worth a lot of money, so he did not want us to steal it. When we found out what he was doing, I got to inform him that we were taking away his poop. He kicked me. Obligatory, not a therapist, but my hyperconservative parents sent me to an addiction therapist because they found out I smoked pot occasionally in high school. The therapist they chose was a former White House drug czar, a renowned authority on cocaine addiction and hard drug abuse, and an expert on rehabilitating extreme problem cases. My parents must have spent a fortune and pulled strings to get me an appointment. The first session, he asked me what drugs I use. I told him I smoke pot like once a week, and that was it. After a few rounds of, come on, you can trust me, and we can't begin treatment until you admit your problem, he realizes that I really do only smoke pot once in a while, and literally says, "You've got to be kidding me. Tell your parents you're a normal teenager and you don't need to come back." One that sticks out in my mind was a mother that brought in her 5-year-old for therapy because she was into Disney princesses, which are clearly sexual, and since a 5-year-old is non-sexual, this must clearly mean she's being inappropriately abused by a close family member. I've also worked with countless couples who have come to counseling for adultery, wherein adultery equals adult images. One client even became suicidal because she caught her husband pleasuring himself after not screwing him for months. I know everyone has different values, but come on, y'all. Friendly reminder that if you enjoyed this content, hit subscribe and like the video. It really does help. And also, subscribe to Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and remember to drink some water too. I was working surveillance one night at a psych ward, keeping a close watch on a mentally ill patient. Right before my shift started, I was briefed that the patient had started eating one of the light bulbs and attacked a nurse. At around 5 a.m., he woke up and saw me sitting there at the end of his bed. I said good morning, and he didn't reply. About 15 minutes of silence went by before he stood up, stared out the window, and said, "A person is most vulnerable when taking a crap." I didn't sit back down for the rest of my shift. Social work. Not therapy, but close enough. Me. We need to think of some new ways for you to discipline your daughters other than spanking. Client. But my parents did it to me, and I turned out okay. Me. Stares at this high school dropout drug addict who has spent his entire adult life in and out of jail/halfway houses, can't get a job, and has had his 3 kids removed for abuse and neglect. Okay. I actually did successfully turn this around in a gentle way and make him realize he hadn't actually, quote, turned out okay. I had a client, an older female refugee that I worked with for several months before she told me that she had court the next week and was worried because she could be deported if found guilty. She didn't tell me earlier because she was ashamed and suffered in silence. She was living with extended family, and the family got busted for smuggling and selling khat, a stimulant narcotic. The family determined that she would take the fall for her husband and sons who were behind the operation. At the arrest, the police brought an interpreter for a different language from a different ethnic group in a different country than the client was from. On top of that, she said the police didn't have an interpreter present during the questioning at the station, and she waited there for almost 2 days until they found an interpreter for her language. I asked her if she understood what was happening, and she said her lawyer, public defendant she met once, told her she would be deported. Beyond that, she had no understanding of the situation, process, etc. I had seen her psych evaluation stating that she had the cognitive equivalent of a 7-year-old. So I told her that we have information that could help her case and that her lawyer should see it as soon as possible. This was on a Friday, court was on Wednesday, and the client didn't know the name or any information about her public defender. We got a friend to help her collect the information. The client brought it to me on Monday, signed the ORI. Lawyer called me back that afternoon saying they've got nothing to help this poor woman even though the case seems appropriately set up. I told the lawyer that we've got a whole bunch of insight and data and records that will get the charges dropped. I didn't work Tuesdays and was going nuts worrying and hoping everything would get to where it needs to and in the hands of the people who need to see it. On Wednesday, news from court comes that all charges were dropped. I used to get all kinds of things sprung on me at the last minute, then have to perform all kinds of bureaucratic trapeze maneuvers to alter the outcome of high-stakes situations. I wrote so many letters. I was hired to be a mental health provider, but I ended up doing tons of case management because nobody else wanted to. Have a master's in clinical psychology and currently working towards my doctorate. I laughed reading this question because I feel like I have at least one of those moments per day at my clinic rotations, regardless of type of setting. One that stood out the most was when I was working a camp for children with various psychological disorders, most with some sort of behavioral concerns. The girl I was paired with had a history of aggressive and violent tendencies. We went the whole day without any problems. That was, until we were doing some group physical activity to wind down and focus before leaving for the day. She didn't like that this meant no longer playing with a certain toy, so she took off her shoe and threw it at the little boy in front of her. He had autism and immediately started crying and screaming. While someone helped him, I turned to the girl to explain to her what she did was wrong. As I turned towards her, she punched me square in the face, then grabbed a hold of my hair. Managed to pull out a good chunk. I'm about 5'1", and this girl was maybe 1 or 2 inches shorter than me and had about 20 pounds on me, despite being 9 years old. Trying to get a safe physical restraint was difficult and comical to say the least. Finally got some help from other staff, and we were able to calm her down after about 15 minutes. The kicker was, when we told her mom what happened, she basically dismissed the entire thing and laughed about it. So frustrating, because you know this kind of thing is reinforced at home as there is no punishment. The girl then starts hitting her mom, who grabs and holds down her arms. The little girl laughs, looks at me, and the other staff member, and says, "Ugh, a little help over here? Are you going to let her do this to me? She's hurting my arm." I went home and did this weird laugh/cry for a few hours. Luckily, you learn pretty quickly not to take things personally and move on, so things were back to normal the next day. I do occasionally look back at that day just baffled at how quickly that whole situation escalated. Most of the other moments that come to mind involve poop in some capacity. I work in a community residence for adults with mental illness. Most of them are very capable and independent. One girl, 27 years old, constantly acts really dumb for sympathy and will do dumb things because she can, I guess. First week she was admitted, she tripped on something getting out of bed. She's 5'1" and like 200 pounds, and she fell on her foot and broke some of the small bones in the foot. I take her to get her cast, and she gets the usual don't get the cast wet, use your crutches, elevate, blah blah blah. Since her bedroom was on the second floor, we had to send her back to her mother's house for a few weeks since she would not be able to exit the building in time in case of emergency. Well, 5 days later, the shoe/boot thingy to put over your cast comes in, and we call her up saying we'll bring it over. Her response? Well, I don't think it'll fit. Why not, we ask. Because I cut my cast off. I got it wet, and it was too tight. They didn't give her a second cast, and she never used her crutches, claiming they were unstable and she would fall and get hurt if she used them. Her foot never healed properly, and 2 months later, she fell and broke it again. Edit, since you all have questions. She didn't get a second cast because A, she would have to pay for it herself and she didn't have the money, and B, doctors did not want to give her another plaster cast, fearing she would just cut that off too. Other options for a cast insurance wouldn't cover. Number 2. Yes, being 5'1" and 200 pounds is severely overweight. Many times, people with mental health issues come from low-income backgrounds. Often, people with mental illness are overweight due to lack of good health care and know-how to lose weight themselves. Number 3, I can tell she acts stupid on purpose for several reasons. Mostly that when she thinks we're not watching, she slips up and behaves normally and makes actual intelligent decisions. Also, she's told us she thinks guys like her more if she's stupid, and she gets lots of sympathy from people for how stupid she is. Number 4, to the person who said she might likely lose the foot, she's told us she wants her foot amputated because then it wouldn't hurt so much. Logic. My client told me his family didn't appreciate his interest in guns, to which he proceeded to tell me he is always carrying. He then places his gun on the table in front of me and asked if it made me nervous. It did, but we focused more about why he wanted to know if I was nervous, and I brought it back around to his family. From then on, I made sure to always have access to a door and never put the client between the door and myself again, just to be safe. This recently happened to me. I have a client who is a daily methadone doser. During our last session, he complained of sleep issues. Delving into this new issue, he described his solution to me. He saves his spit in a jar to drink at night when he is unable to sleep. Saves his spit in a jar to drink later. I'm a therapist and have a few of these stories, but this story was actually told to me by a therapist friend of mine. He said that he was working in a mental hospital a few years ago, and he and other staff had heard a loud scream from down the hall. They ran to go check it out and got to a patient's room to see blood all over his face and hand, and realized he had torn his own eyeball out. They tried to defuse the situation and start looking around for the eyeball. They couldn't find it. He had eaten his own eyeball. Edit, I don't know the reason the patient gave for eating and or removing his eye, but I will say it takes a pretty severe level of psychosis for a person to be able to do this. Honestly, he was probably more concerned about the quote reason he needed to take his eye out than he was with the pain of it. I can't imagine the emotional pain he must have been going through to be able to get to this point. Worked one summer at a summer school for special needs children about 2 years ago when I was 14. I was just a teacher's aide, so most of what I was doing was playing with the lower maintenance children and just running errands for the teachers. One morning, I was helping the kids put their stuff into their cubbies, and one of the kids was just standing in front of his, staring at me with his lunch bag in his hands. This was one of the more violent kids who would act up at the slightest of breezes. He was about 11 or 12 and had severe autism. I asked him if he needed help putting his stuff away, and he replied with only some mumbling. I asked him to speak clearly, and he said, "I'm going to hurt you." I was really confused and asked him to repeat what he said. He then screamed at the top of his lungs, "I'm going to hurt you!" and swung his lunchbox straight for my head. Luckily, I kinda expected this thing to happen, so I was ready to duck, and he missed. I was not allowed to even touch any of the students because I was not trained to restrain them, so until the teachers got him under control, all I could do was run around the classroom as he chased me. Once the teachers restrained him, he was under control within about 10 or 15 minutes. When the teacher asked him why he did what he did, he said that he was angry because his dad didn't bring him to Denny's that morning. I was assaulted because a kid didn't get to go to Denny's. Quite common, actually. Anything outside the normal routine, and they have a meltdown. My son is autistic, and when he was younger, he'd have an absolute meltdown when the seasons changed. For the winter months, he'd obviously put on his winter jacket, hat, and gloves. Once spring came, I gave him a light coat one morning, and he fell to the ground crying and screaming because he thought he wasn't going to school. Tough days, let me tell you. Thankfully, he has amazing teachers and support, and my biggest problem now is he takes his socks off at night and throws them on the side of his huge bunk bed that I can't move. So, typical annoying kid stuff now. Forensic therapist here. I work with paroled sex offenders. One time, a guy I worked with urinated on my coworker's car in broad daylight. She was in the car. He made eye contact with her while he was doing it. His PO picked him up from group 20 minutes later. He's currently having a little vacation at a state facility. When I worked in bereavement, a client of mine used the term, quote, skid marks when discussing the accident. For some reason, there and then, the expression just caught me off guard. I joined the dots, and the corners of my mouth started to rise. In actuality, this may have only lasted a moment, but it felt like minutes, all the while I was drawing blood as I chewed down on the insides of my cheeks. I felt like the worst human being alive. Was running an addiction treatment group. Some of the participants were referred by the court, usually for a DUI. The referral conditions were simple. If they finished treatment, they would not serve time in jail for the DUI. One of these court-referred DUI participants ran a limo service and showed up to group with a tablet and cell phone. He spread things out and proceeded to treat the space as his personal office. I intervened, explaining he would not be able to conduct business while participating in the group. He gave me a look that would have killed an ordinary person, said it was a busy time of year and he really needed to stay in touch with his drivers. I told him I understood, but he still needed to put the stuff away and pay attention. Lots of eye rolling, I can't believe this lady, and he still kept checking his phone and getting up to go outside and take calls. During the break, I told him his behavior was disruptive and he would have to leave. This seemed to make him happy, until I added I will be telling the judge he did not complete treatment. For the first time, he seemed to slowly realize he was there for a reason and might actually end up in jail because of his behavior. He apologized and asked to stay, and he settled down after that. Had a patient who swallowed things as a self-injuring behavior. This individual would swallow anything metal and pointy, usually as a way of getting into the hospital or to stay in the hospital. At one point, they wanted to get surgeries or procedures to have the objects removed, but they didn't actually want to die. One instance where they almost died after ingesting a series of closed safety pins that ended up opening inside their stomach stopped them from eating things that wouldn't pass. Anyway, so this person was upset that they were getting discharged as they wanted to stay until the beginning of the month. Hate to say it, but it's not uncommon to see people come in because they are out of benefits for the month. The usual complaints of wanting to die weren't working because we know this person doesn't actually want to die. So they went and swallowed the iron from the Monopoly game. It didn't work, we still discharged them, but ever since then, we haven't been allowed to have board games on the unit without staff supervision. Had a client who was told he absolutely had to start losing weight else he would become troublingly diabetic and begin losing appendages. He didn't put much effort in, eventually having his foot amputated. Time after time I saw him, I had to explain that having a foot amputated did not count as half a stone towards his weight loss targets. He was genuinely mortified. Had a patient once with auditory hallucinations. They suddenly decided I was, quote, the voice, and they had to do whatever I said. So, I encouraged them to do positive things for others, and always be nice to their mother. You know, now I actually am curious. If there's anybody listening to these videos out there with schizophrenia, how does that affect you? Did the voices affect you in a positive way? Do they tell you to do positive things? Or are these hallucinations always negative? Let me know in the comments. I was working with a woman who had struggled with alcohol throughout her life and during her pregnancies. She denied drinking while pregnant, but 2 of her children were born with fetal alcohol syndrome. She was seeing me in session to process her reaction to receiving letters from her children that basically called her out for being a bad mom and saddling them with the disease because she drank. She was really defensive and said, I don't know why they're mad at me, because everyone knows you get fetal alcohol syndrome from the dad. Not sure if deflecting or just that uninformed. It was pretty memorable when a histrionic patient leapt onto my desk so I could better appreciate her new sneakers.
What is the most pathetic way someone has tried to assert dominance over you? I always feel like the guys who refuse to make room for you when walking by in the other direction are trying to assert their dominance and make themselves feel like hot crap. I never understood why people do that. I figured out the best way to handle this when I was in college and the sidewalks were narrow. Just stop walking and stand still. Now they're the only ones walking and have to go out of their way to avoid you, instead of them expecting you to move. He tried to drink water faster than me. No one drinks water faster than me. No one drinks a tall glass of water like Gaston. Worked as a lifeguard at a summer camp years ago. During safety training, we had to do a missing persons search, which required all available staff to join hands and walk from the beach to the water as far as we could while feeling with our feet for the missing swimmer. During training, there was a sandbag we had to find. The guy next to me kept insisting on holding mine in a certain way because I will take the upper hand in this situation, said at me while staring down. Whatever, dude, we're theoretically looking for a drowned child right now. Earlier this year, my boss asked me to do something and then leaned over me and said, "You are going to do it." He was like literally leaning over me because he was 6'8". Dude acted like a cliché high school bully from an 80s movie and was like 40 years old, so I assume he was at some point. Anyways, he quit. I used to tend bar in Milwaukee, and there's nothing that triggers bros more than seeing someone drinking something that they personally don't like. I can't tell you how many arguments began with some guy, always unsolicited or unprovoked, mind you, feeling compelled to judge and educate other guys about what they're drinking or not drinking. You drink that? And it goes downhill from there. Nobody cares. Drink what you like and shut up. I was at a bar in Stevens Point and the barman whips out a skin flick mag asking if I want to read it. No thanks. Why not? Are you gay? He looked as if I'd offended his ancestors by not wanting to read his adult magazine in the middle of a bar. Yeah, I used to know cliché blokey wannabes growing up who had deluded themselves into thinking that this was a totally normal thing to do. Keep it private, folks. No friendship is enhanced by looking at naughty bits together. Literally last weekend, some really drunk dude who I've never met once or interacted with tried to fight me to impress the girls he was with. It was completely ridiculous, and his way of trying to initiate it was just to repeatedly body check me on the dance floor, which I ignored because I thought he was just being drunk and dumb. Turns out one of his friends had to stop him from blindsiding me with a sucker punch to the face, assuming he was able to aim that well. Some people do not mix well with alcohol, apparently. My husband is a tall dude and told me that while at university, he constantly had guys trying to pick fights with him at the bar. It was like they found the biggest guy there was and was like, "Yep, I'm gonna beat him up." My husband is the biggest softy though, so he would just kind of laugh and brush them off. I've worked at bars my whole life and this is very common. If you're tall, you're a target. It makes no sense and has nothing to do with the personality of the tall guy. It's just what it is. It's even worse for bouncers. The mentality, which is probably subconscious, is that if you're an aggressive smaller guy and you fight a bigger guy, it's a win-win. Either you lost because he's bigger, or you won and took down the bigger guy. It's funny because over the years, I've never had a problem with big guys. The 6'5" dudes are fine. It's always the short dudes you have to kick out. People are weird. A former co-worker, he would just stand in the way and refuse to move. Even if he wasn't in the way, he would purposefully get in the way. I work in a narrow kitchen, so you can imagine how annoying that could be. At one particular moment, I was carrying a bulky 20-pound box, and he decided to do that. I pretended not to see him and barreled into him. He fell over and got incredibly mad at me. Started talking about how I have no muscle. It was actually pretty funny. It was a display of the most fragile masculinity I have ever seen. Similar experience. I had a regular keg and one of those skinny kegs on my shoulders. I was hustling to get through the narrow kitchen to replace the blown kegs for the bartender. Idiot guy who did the block game did the same to me and I definitely barreled into him. He proceeded to jump up and try to trip me in the bar, to which I dropped the skinny keg on his foot. Like, you see someone with heavy crap, don't be a butthole. Not me, but my wife. We were living in an apartment complex and my wife had just parked her car, was carrying groceries and my 2-year-old inside, and this guy stopped her and said, "That's my spot. You need to move your car now." We don't have assigned spaces, but my wife was caught like a deer in headlights and put all the groceries and my daughter back in the car and moved it, just so he could park his 10-year-old Cadillac CTS in his favorite spot. I always got home from work before this guy, however. I never directly confronted him. But from then on, that parking spot became my spot, and I parked there every single day for the next 2 years. I saw him out and about a few times, but thankfully being 6'1" and overweight and bearded, most people chose not to fight with me, even though I've never been in a fight and would be helpless in a confrontational situation. In junior high, I remember this one bully that would get on his tiptoes and puff out his chest like a gorilla, and get all in your face whenever he felt threatened. It was such a funny stereotype maneuver. He did that once to one of my friends as he was trying to start a fight. He'd spread his arms wide and push out his chest while aggressively asking, "You wanna go? Huh? You wanna go?" Without a word, my friend grabbed his collar and pulled him into a headbutt, knocking him to the ground, delirious in one hit. My friend, in fact, wanted to go. Plot twist: the guy was asking your friend to go to the prom with him. Double plot twist: the headbutt was actually a kiss, and the bully swooned. Sounds like my high school. A friend of mine was this short, about 5'6" at the time, built like a little tank wrestler who was a huge nerd. D&D, magic, you name it, he loved it. There was a giant football player, 6'4", who was a notorious jackass. Football player starts harassing my friend, calling him the usual, "I'm a big tough man," insults. My friend asks him to stop. The football player puffs up his chest and says, "You wanna frickin' go, little man?" My friend turns slightly and drives his elbow right into the guy's solar plexus. It's pretty hard to look tough when you're gasping for air like a fish out of water. Forgot to mention my friend had been talking about a new D&D campaign he was working on when this happened. One time at a house party, a few of us were talking to some girls, and one of the guys randomly started talking about how he does MMA. Then another guy joined in, and those two started wrestling in front of the girls. I don't think their shirts needed to come off, but what the frick do I know? Taking off your shirt is proper MMA procedure and culture. Leaving them on could have dishonored their whole family. This happened over D&D when my friend, who owns a store, let these guys we didn't know that well join our campaign. I don't know why I, out of the table, got singled out, but a girl walks in and this guy complained that I didn't order pizza for him. Said, "How about you go frick yourself," when I asked him if he wanted some of mine. Walked over behind me and, playfully, put his arms around my neck. I told him I'd punch him in the face if he did it one more time because I don't know who the frick he is. It absolutely ruined my day. By flicking my boy bosoms. I was standing in the breezeway outside a friend's apartment while in college, and a guy coming down the stairs from an upper floor kinda tripped near the bottom of the stairs and stumbled into me. It was clear that he was super drunk and immediately got aggressive. He was so worked up about being tougher than me that for some reason he started doing push-ups at me while me and my friends just laughed. Fortunately, his friends came and apologized and took him back up the stairs, but it was definitely the most bizarre assertion of dominance I've ever encountered. His lizard hindbrain is apparently of the Texas spiny lizard variety. They do push-ups at each other to defend their territories, which are frequently suburban driveways. I don't know about no lizards, but I can confirm for y'all that a drunk push-up contest to assert dominance is pretty Texan. I don't know if push-upping spiny lizards are actually a thing or not, and you know what? I don't care to Google it, because finding out that they didn't exist would only be disappointing to me now. Generally, guys purposely bumping into you when you walk past them, especially if they're with friends. My high school was overcrowded, so hallways were always packed, but I always did my best to move for people or turn myself so people could get through. But I realized I was always the one moving for other people, so one day I decided not to move for people, and most of the guys I encountered in the hall would just run into me because they refused to move. Like, just move. My daily commute on the subway was like this. People standing directly in front of the doors and even trying to enter as if you were just a spectre image they can walk through. I used to move out of their way or excuse myself. Now I just do the same and walk through them if they refuse to move. I simply expect this to be an unfortunate normal part of my life going forward, lest I be the one knocked over or missing the opportunity to disembark again. I work in a grocery store and sometimes I help unload the delivery trucks when our delivery comes in on what we call cages. Like a 6-foot cage on wheels, and obviously one that's full of toilet paper will be really light, and one filled with 2-liter bottles of juice are the heavy ones. The lift that lowers them from the truck has that patterned metal floor, and you have to pull the heavy ones hard just to get them off. Now, I'm 5'8" and don't have a lot of weight on me, but I can pull these cages off just fine. But there's a guy who's like 6'2" and is always trying to show how strong he is. So whenever I'm helping and he's there, he always insists that he gets the heavy cages and I get the little guy cages. Everyone agrees he needs to grow up. Guys like that are great though, because you can just chill and let them do all the annoying work if they feel the need to prove something. This is brilliant. Subtly threaten their masculinity and watch them do all the hard work. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A friend tried to make himself look good in front of his crush by literally putting me in a random chokehold for a laugh. Turns out it was because I was talking to her. I had a girlfriend at the time, we were just talking. It wasn't a chokehold though, it was basically just a headlock, so I decided to correct him. I was fairly oblivious and didn't realize this was a failed alpha move. Creeped the crap out of his crush that he would do that out of nowhere, and she stopped talking to him. Apparently she quite liked him up until that point, so he kinda shot himself in the foot. Because romantic interests respond well to displays of unprovoked aggression and violence, right? Right? I just love a man who can fly off the handle at any moment. Was out having a drink, started chatting to the guy next to me when I learned that he too is a musician. He then tells me, "You're not a musician. I find it offensive when people tell me they're a musician when they haven't put in the time and dedication that I have." Okay, dude, come down off your ego trip. Jesus Christ. What the frick? How the frick would he know how much time and dedication you put into it? Heck, for all you know, he hasn't put in any either. Frick, he isn't even devoted enough to music to prefer it to feeding his ego. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. I had someone stand on their tippy toes to seem taller when we were talking. Talked about how the MBA program at his alma mater was superior to where I was getting my MBA. For clarification, he doesn't have and isn't working on an MBA, but wanted to be sure I knew he was better because he went to a school with a perceived better program. So when I was in the 8th grade, there was this one kid who hated me for no reason. I was really big for my age, and there was no way this 5'1" guy was going to fight me, so he did something so cringy I have no idea what he was going for. I was sitting at lunch with my friends, and this kid walks up to us and spits in my glass of milk and says in a very commanding tone, "Drink." I just stood up and the kid bolted. Got a good laugh out of it with my friend though. To be clear, I did not drink the milk. You just reminded me of the one time in high school a freshman sitting across from me, I was a senior, decided that bothering me was his ticket to alpha status or something. One day at lunch, he threw a curly fry into my drink and asked me what I was going to do about it. He had just gotten back from the snack bar with a couple of cookies and an unopened bottle of soda, so I just reached over and took those. I didn't really like the soda, and I only wanted one cookie, so I doled the rest out to my friends. He just laughed nervously. Once I realized he wasn't going to do anything about it, I thanked him for the cookie. Freshman being a butthole, you gonna do something about it? Senior does something about it. Freshman, surprised Pikachu JPEG. When asked about what his hobbies are, he responded with, "Hobbies are for children and single women. I work." You want to know how cool I am? You want to know how tough I am? I'm so tough that I have no life, interests, or friends. Oh, fun. Sounds like the kind of guy who'll either work himself to death or suffer a complete mental breakdown 1 week into retirement. The type of person who after he retires will have no idea how to occupy himself, so he'll spend his time calling the police over minor noise complaints and hassling his neighbors over where his exact property line is. We had a candidate come into the interview and legit say that he wanted to sit behind the desk because he was going to be the one asking the questions to decide if he wanted to work with us. I think he'd gotten some bad advice about having confidence. I laughed, but our HR manager flipped out. The only time I've ever actually seen her call security. What was the guy's reaction once he realized it was going so badly? Oh, he commented, "Well, this is obviously a hostile work environment, blah blah blah." Was on a 4-hour flight, in a 2-person row. The guy demanded to have full access to the middle armrest, would push my arm off it if I ever got near it. Oh man, I was in the middle of a 3-seat row. The guy on my left was some kind of exec, checking his work email on his laptop. Anyway, after the first hour of armrest jockeying, I just asked him, "Are we doing this the entire flight?" He pretended to not speak English. The mother fricker was reading his emails in English and pulled the no hables card on me. He finally conceded the armrest after that. Yeah, I think it's common consensus that the person in the middle seat gets both their armrests, isn't it? It's one of those unspoken rules that you would feel like a jackass for trying to enforce, though. I was walking to my car after school and this guy was getting in his car and just yells at me, "You ugly as frick, bro." I flipped him off without even looking at him and he called me the B word and drove off. How petty do you have to be to tell someone minding their own business that they're ugly? People that shout out of cars are cowards. Excuse me, they prefer the term scrub. I was leaving a gas station once with a 6-pack of some craft beer to go watch a game at my friend's house, and a group of college kids were driving out of the parking lot, and one yelled out the window, "6-packs are for," slang word for female anatomy. I guess the amount of beer I was planning on drinking that night wasn't adequate to his standards. Had a dude get mad at me for talking to his girl all the time. I was her econ tutor. I once tutored this truly clueless girl at general chemistry. She wanted to be a nurse and couldn't get past the first class, but whatever, I'll tutor you. She was, however, very pretty. Second tutoring session, she shows up with her boyfriend. Dude doesn't study, doesn't say a damn word the whole 2-hour session, just stares at me and her going over the basics of chemistry. Next class, same thing. Next class, I bring my girlfriend to have a stare-off with him. He got the message and left us alone. If you can't trust your partner to spend 2 hours in a crowded university library without screwing someone else, you probably shouldn't be with that person. I had a guy message me threats on Facebook because I'd been talking to his girlfriend. The thing is, his girlfriend is my cousin and I don't live in Alabama. I guess she couldn't speak to anyone at all. A friend of mine had a girl send her a ton of nasty texts one day, totally out of the blue. Stay away from him, he loves me, you're probably an ugly B-word, etc. My friend is the guy's aunt. Was at a party and was given the task of handing out beers to people. This guy flipped his crap, saying he only drank real beer. Dude, it was cold and free. That's the best beer there is. A guy was mad at me while sitting at a light and was revving his engine. It sounded like he'd held it at the red line, and there was a big crack sound and smoke started pouring out the front of his car. The dummy had blown his engine. That's when you throw your head back and laugh as you slowly accelerate forward in your 2013 Dodge Dart. My neighbor in front of my house had a boyfriend that would literally rip his shirt off and come outside every single time I was in my front yard. It could be 7 a.m. or midnight, but it wouldn't matter to him. I could be walking to my car and here comes Mr. Globo Jim flexing all around his yard. He would immediately go back inside when I went back inside. This went on for almost half a year until one day I saw him hop into his mega-lifted truck and drive away never to be seen again. He did have some pretty sweet pecs though. I would have spent a day fricking with him. Go outside a while and wait for him to come out, then just go back in until he leaves, then do it again. Make a buff-looking scarecrow and leave it in your front yard. Or like a cardboard cutout of Ronnie Coleman. One night in college, me and my buddies were walking down the street at about 11:30 p.m. We were near a major university on a street that was almost entirely college kids renting. It was Friday night, warm, so lots of people were out drinking on patios, talking, playing drinking games, etc. Generally pretty chill. We're done pre-gaming at home and headed to a bar or something, I don't remember. Anyway, we're walking down the road and across the street there's some people on a patio. They yelled something at us, we weren't really listening but the tone seemed friendly at least. Woo, yeah, college bro, am I right? Generally, kind of thing. So I yell back, yeah man, cool beans, and return to my conversation. Apparently this guy does not like beans, regardless of temperature, because the next thing I hear is, did you just frickin' say cool beans? And I see this perfect Skylar pop-collar college bro storming off his porch to come across the street at us, looking like I just peed in his Bud Light. I can only respond with a confused, yeah? My group stops. This dude is crossing the street at us looking like he wants to fight. Him? Say it again, bro. What did you just say? Some girl behind him. Just let it go, Blake, or Skylar or Chad, whatever he was called. They didn't mean it. Me. What? Really? My friend? What the frick? I said cool beans. Get the frick out of here, dude, before I kick your butt. Okay, later, bro. And we walked off the street as he started angrily flexing in the middle of the street while his girlfriend is tugging his arm, trying to get him back into the house. We made it to the end of the block, about 3 more houses probably, before my entire group just broke down laughing at the absurdity of it. I really don't understand it. Was it supposed to be a prank? Was he just a drunk dude looking for a fight? Did he think I was intimidated? I'm not sure. Either way, cool beans and did you just frickin' say cool beans? Are still a standard farewell among that group of friends. His whole family was killed in a freak chilled beans accident. His girl saying he didn't mean it is the most intriguing part of the story. Not me, but my dad. My dad has season tickets for the AHL hockey team in town. One day he was late for a game and arrived to see a teen in his seat with his girlfriend. My dad kindly asked him to move, explaining that those were his seats. The teen responded with a quick, "No, it's not." My dad then showed him his season ticket and pointed out on the kids' tickets that their actual seats were a few rows up. The kid got up and tried to square up to my dad. My father was just like, "Really, dude?" and ignored them. The girlfriend began screaming at my dad for being a butthole. Long story short, Dad kindly asked a kid to get out of his seat and the kid tried to intimidate my dad for this.
College Redditors What's the one high school habit each incoming freshman needs to stop doing on their first day of college? I'll start. No longer are you required to raise your hand and ask to use the restroom. Just get up and leave quietly. Don't wear shirts with your high school name, graduation date, class motto, etc. If you sit in the front row with the laptop, actually pay attention. Do not use Facebook, Reddit, or play Tetris. If you're sick, you don't need a note from your parents. Don't eat loud food in class. Please, please, please follow this one. Don't talk loudly in class. People are there to learn. Keep your high school GPA, sports accomplishments, SAT/ACT scores, and awards to yourself. No one cares. Oh, you were in an AP class? No one cares. You were popular in high school? No one cares. You were a nerd in high school? No one cares. You think your professor is a jerkwad? No one cares. You were prom king? No one cares. In essence, don't take yourself too seriously. Approach college with a sense of humbleness. Don't boast too much about your old self in high school. For the record, when they say no one cares, they don't mean that none of that matters or is worth nothing. It just means that it's not going to affect the friends you make or the activities you participate in. For me, at least, college was a time where I really started to come out of my shell. High school doesn't matter anymore, despite all my dreams taking place there. Your life isn't over if you walk into class late. Just calmly go in and take a seat. You'll be fine. Yes, it will be on the test. After a test, you don't have to stick around. Pack your stuff up and leave quietly. If you're struggling, don't wait to get help. Seriously, if your school is halfway decent, there's at least one other resource outside of your professor that you can consult for tutoring. You will regret letting your pride and/or laziness get in the way of passing a class. Finally, if professors offer to read rough drafts of papers, send or take them a rough draft. Not only will you get suggestions tailored to your professor's grading tendencies, but your professor is also aware that they told you your paper is fine, quote, except for. So if they said that one paragraph looked fine and then realized later it should have been expanded on in some detail, they will probably be more lenient. You sought help, they missed it. Oh well. Besides, you'll become a much better writer hearing suggestions from multiple sources. My essay writing has improved significantly because of my professor's input. Edit. So, I forgot this was about habit breaking. Here's a habit to break, so I'm actually answering a question. Don't sleep in class or otherwise ignore your professor. The lectures generally emphasize what your professor thinks is most important and what will be stressed on your tests. Besides, they usually have funny or interesting stories that revolve around the topic. It's fun stuff. Edit 2. Since it seems to be getting mentioned a lot, there are instances in which you do stay after the exam. I suspect, however, your professor will mention it in those circumstances. If in doubt, just ask the professor beforehand. Making up excuses to a professor if you miss the due date for an assignment. It isn't that they aren't listening, it's that they simply will not care. Stop being so embarrassed when your family phones you or comes over. They probably live very far away and came here to see you. Show them some love. Professor here. Number 1. Don't plagiarize. We'll catch you. If we do, fess up. The first several times, the student said, I don't know how that happened. Remember that uncommon knowledge should be cited. Number 2. If the prof asks you to come in for help, do it. We can't help you if you don't. Number 3. I can't tell you how many, quote, smart kids have dropped out. If you get so behind that you feel overwhelmed, talk to someone, anyone, and everyone until you get back on track. You may need professional help. Number 4. Get involved. The more connected you are, the better you'll do. Number 5. Live on campus if you can. Why? See number 4. Number 6. You'll get some great professors and some crappy ones, no matter what school you go to. If all of them are great, let me know and I'll put my application in. I'm not being egotistical. I just don't like having uncomfortable conversations with students about their bad professors. Also, who one student feels is awful may end up being your favorite. Number 7. Take advantage of electives. Try something you may never get to try again. No more raw dogging it. Please wear a condom. This may seem kind of random and out of the blue, but seriously, college campuses are one of the easiest ways to get STDs. There's no shame in nabbing a free condom if there's a table giving them away. The worst habit you can get into is not being safe. You definitely need to study. If you had it easy in high school, it likely will not be that way in college. Putting your phone on vibrate is not the same as putting your phone on silent. Everyone can hear your phone buzz. Everyone can also see you texting during lecture. Hiding your phone under your desk fools no one. Putting on makeup in the middle of class? No one cares anymore. Some people just drag themselves out of bed wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. I actually have a couple tips about this. Number 1. In my acting classes, it was actually standard to wear comfortable clothing like sweatpants and t-shirts. We do a lot of posing, stretching, laying on the floor, etc., so it was important to wear something that you could actually move in. Tip: if you're signing up for an exercise, acting, or dance class, read the syllabus. It is your professor's Bible. Number 2. I was a soundboard operator for a play that had a morning performance, and I ended up waking up about 5 minutes before showtime, so I had no time to get ready. I bolted to the building in my oversized t-shirt and bright red flannels, did my job, and went back to my dorm. Tip: be sure to set your alarm. And also, nobody cares about what you're wearing. I've seen people in class with rainbow He-Man t-shirts on. It's all part of the experience. Stop checking Facebook every 3 seconds. It's amazing how much time it will free up for you. Don't shout out snide comments during class trying to get people to laugh. We don't care if that's what she said. We just want to learn. Here's a tip. After you subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below, don't watch us during class. But you do get brownie points for liking the video and turning on notifications. Thanks for watching. Number 1. Be ready to change your major if you need to. What you actually do in a given field of study is often radically different than what you'd imagine. Had a friend go into physics, spent the last 2 years of his degree programming simulations. Switch early enough, and you won't have too many headaches. Number 2. You can sneak into other classes. No one is going to stop or even notice you. Do this a lot, and you'll eventually be able to talk about just anything. Number 3. Use the library. Steal from databases. Outside of college, knowledge is expensive, and libraries are sorely underfunded. Number 4. Most clubs are kind of BS. Attend anyway. Catch a couple club members outside of the meetings, get a couple drinks in with them, and you'll probably get something closer to what you were looking for. Number 5. Even if you're living off of your folks, if you can swing a part-time job, get one. Having a bit of scratch makes having a social life a lot easier, and it's going to stay that way after you graduate, regardless of how cozy you are. Having a social life makes having an intellectual/professional life a lot easier too. The right friends can do wonders for your academic performance. Number 1. Make as many friends as possible. Number 2. Introduce yourself to your professors. You go from number 8675309 to name. Number 3. No one is in a clique anymore. If they are, screw them. Number 4. If you aren't going to pay attention in class, don't disrupt your classmates with internet conversations or texting. 4.5. Professors can easily pick out people not paying attention and will most likely assume that you do not care about your grade. Number 5. Don't fall victim to no more parents, no more rules, especially on food. Number 6. Going home ain't nothing, but keeping in contact with your parents is. Number 7. Find stuff to involve yourself in, but don't involve in all the things. Number 8. You will meet a crap load of people. Even if you don't like them, don't burn the bridge. Number 9. There will always be someone smarter than you. Don't play know-it-all. Maybe not a habit, but a lesson. And I'm sorry if this is a bit negative or heartbreaking. There will be classes that, no matter how hard you try, you will be terrible with. I enrolled as an aerospace major because I wanted to change the world, despite being more of a history/English person. I, by some miracle, passed my second calculus class with a D. I had absolutely no hope with my third calculus class. I had a tutor, I went to study sessions, I went to office hours, I was housed with engineers. But at that point, nothing could teach me how to get from point A to point B. It was basically magic, with some loose logic here and there. I failed that class, despite all my effort. I'm not saying that you will also fail, but that there will be classes that will be nearly impossible to ace. It's very difficult to get all-around A's. But maybe that's just my engineering school. Here, the engineering average GPA is just over 2.0, I believe. And, no exaggeration, The average math test score is 50% or below, so curving is completely necessary. And always check the class average before you panic and wait for the curve. I got a 23 out of 100 on my Calc 2 exam once. The class average was a 10 out of 100. My 23% became an A. You're going to class, not the club. Alternatively, to those same students about 2 months later, you're going to class, not to bed. Giving a crap about what your peers think about you, and having opinions about your peers based on trivial things like whether or not they wear their varsity jacket. But stop asking random people for a piece of gum when they take it out of their bag. Get your own gum. Try not to screw up your grades your first year or you spend the next 3+ trying to make up for it. Also, get involved, but don't overdo it. Not everyone can be involved in and the president of every organization on campus, but try something. Don't just go to class and then screw around in your room. Buy into the whole college experience, please. No, it's totally true. The first year is the easiest to screw up. I spent more time worrying about a particular extracurricular and the fact that suddenly there were parties, tiny high school, barely any social life, and my grades really suffered. Every semester after the first 2, I got better and better grades, but they ruined the pretty average score overall. Can confirm I bombed my first semester, but every semester after that just got better and better. As long as you have people around you to support you, something as new and scary as college won't be as scary. Don't bother sucking up to the professors. While in high school nobody liked teachers' pets, being one could legitimately give you an advantage. In college, you are one of thousands of students that your professor sees daily. If you become the classic suck-up, you're probably not going to be well liked by your classmates, and the professor will just see you as one out of many students, or, worst case scenario, as a bothersome jerk. Don't be afraid of asking your professor anything you don't understand. While they're held to a much higher standard than your normal teachers, they're still human. That doesn't mean you should interrupt them in the middle of a lecture. What I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong going to the professor after class to clear up your doubts. Expect failure. It doesn't matter if you're smart or even a genius. You're going to a whole different environment. It really is a whole new world you're entering, and getting used to it can be tough for some. The world won't end if you get a C on your first test, so chill. For the love of Godzilla, do not call them anything other than professor. Don't call them Mr., don't call them teach, or anything of the sort. Sidebar, this really does depend on the professor. A lot of the professors at my college were on a first-name basis. That's what I love so much about my campus's theater department. Let's go! One last thing. If you're doing any sort of illegal activity, trust no one. I'm not kidding here. Some people will gladly rat you out. Maybe they're prudes that are jealous of you, or maybe they're against what you're doing. Be completely sure you trust who you're hanging out with. You have no idea how many headaches this will avoid. Not giving a crap. I didn't give a crap throughout high school and graduated with the 1 point something or another. I had no intention of going to college. Spent 10 years in the workforce. Made nothing of myself. Job hopped every year. The last job I had was the longest. I worked there for 2 years. I was up for a promotion that was then given to a guy 6 months my junior because he had a degree. At that point, I quit my job and enrolled in community college. The university wouldn't take me. I have recently transferred to said university and I'm currently maintaining a 3.92 GPA, all because I finally decided to give a crap. If you have a minor disagreement with a professor or find what they're saying is just so interesting, save it for after class. The rest of us really don't give a crap. We just want to get the notes, do the classwork, get the homework, unless it's in the syllabus, and go the heck home. Don't drag us into it. It's boring, and we don't care. And sometimes the professors like to drag the rest of the class into the discussion. Edit, this doesn't apply to discussion-based classes or situations where the professor is outright wrong or inappropriate. Learn to not start a conversation with, "So what's your major?" or at least learn to phrase it differently. Personal pet peeve? Maybe. Do every bit of extra credit offered. If you can redo a bad test for extra points, do it. If you can earn extra points for volunteering at some weird event, do it. If you get extra credit for attending every class session, go to every class session. Use every advantage they give you because every single extra point counts. I'm old and back in school, But as an example, in one of my classes, I did so much extra credit that I only needed a 20% on the final to get an A in the class. That knowledge is incredibly valuable when you have 3 other finals the same week. Send thank you notes/emails to the professors you love, the ones that have made a difference or have gone out of their way to help you. Send it after the class is over and you've received your final grade to avoid impropriety, but do it and be heartfelt about it. They not only appreciate it, but at some point, you may need a reference letter if you're transferring or going on to grad school. I have 2 former professors that will stop me on campus to ask how I'm doing and offer help if I need it. Never forget reference pages. Cite everything you've looked at, even if you're not quoting or using statistics from it, and if needed, buy an APA extension for Word if you suck at formatting. Do not forget references ever. Do not take college like it's on autopilot. It isn't set up for you like high school. You set up your classes, professors, and schedule. Take advantage. Screen your classes and professors so you're not walking into stuff blind. If you end up with a crappy professor or class, you're doing it wrong. Rate My Professor is a beautiful resource. Use it. Also, ask around for recommendations from other students. Your opponent in class is stupid bullcrap. Don't take professors that are jerks or make their class hard just for the sake of doing it. If it's a class that doesn't pertain to your major, find the easy prof and take their class. Bank your easy A for GPA support. If it's a major-related class, get good professors whose classes are only as hard as they need to be. I dissent from the advice here about not being a teacher's pet. I suggest it. Don't kiss up, but take excuses to have sidebar conversations with your professors. Geek out with them. They will think more positively of you, and it can show up in your grade. Not all professors in college grade on purely mathematical formula. As someone who grades a lot of papers and essays, please let me urge you, do not, I repeat, do not fall into the crowd that sets up, quote, teams for classes. I see this all the time, where people say, okay, I'll go Monday, you go Wednesday, etc., and share notes. You are paying to go to class, so go to class. There are a lot of people who do this and get away with it, but you will very likely end up hurting yourself in the long run. You might hurt yourself in the way of not doing as well on a test because your friend didn't take the best notes, in the way of not preparing in a prerequisite class for a later class down the road, or you may be violating the school's academic integrity code. I just want to take a quick second to address that last one because it's very important, and I think a lot of the people who screw up simply didn't take it seriously. Most universities have a zero-tolerance policy for cheating. You may think you're getting away with it, but I want to warn you. Teachers/professors do not need to tell you when you're caught. You can go the whole semester thinking you're safe, then suddenly get a nasty letter informing you that you need to go see the Academic Affairs Council. At that point, you are almost certainly hosed, and penalties are usually as severe as possible to use as an example. Please do not underestimate this. It's a lot more serious than high school. Furthermore, if you are farther along in your studies, you can permanently blacklist yourself in the world of academia, potentially losing job opportunities or the ability to go to grad school, which is becoming increasingly necessary. Stop thinking that you're the smartest kid around. You might have been the valedictorian of your high school or whatever, but just because you were the smartest kid there doesn't mean that you're the smartest kid in college. Chances are, everyone else at the school is just as smart as you, if not smarter. Also, don't skip on homework/studying. I was one of those students in high school that rarely did his homework, and I still got good enough grades based on exams that I never had to study for. But in college, those assignments tend to count for a much bigger part of your grade, and most of the time, that homework is going to be much more helpful than high school homework. If you skip the homework, you're likely to have no idea what's going on. As for studying, the exams are much more difficult, and for some classes, the only grades you get are test grades. Mess up on the midterm? Well, you're screwed, since the only other grade is the final. You can't afford to do poorly on one exam, since there's rarely more assignments to buffer your grade. Don't see your professors as, quote, teachers. And in no way do I mean that they're not those who teach, but I mean the fact that, at least for me and many I know, throughout your school career so far, the teachers have been viewed as these much older, almost untouchable people who have this huge status over you. Once I got into college, however, every professor I've had has been very approachable about everything. It feels like talking to an actual human being versus someone who could ruin your life by a single word or sentence. TLDR, don't be afraid to talk to your professors like a normal person. Do not buy your books until you know you are going to use them. I have been swindled one too many times by professors that put expensive textbooks on their required reason lists and never reference them. Along those same lines, never buy textbooks for the campus bookstore. It is ever so much cheaper to order them from Amazon or some similar site. In addition, don't crap on majors that you view as useless or pointless. Telling people, what are you gonna do with X degree? Make coffee? Is not a good way to make friends. Yeah, I've literally had professors be like, hey, I found the textbook you need for this class online as a free PDF, and I'm sending it to the entire class so you don't have to spend $100 on textbooks. Here you go. Those professors are so goated. I love them so much. Thank you.
What was your "I don't get paid enough for this" moment at work? When I worked at McDonald's, I found out we didn't get paid for closing. We got paid until the store closed. So if it took us an extra hour or two to close, that was unpaid. I wish I knew what I know now, because that is an open and shut case, but at the time I was young and dumb. My first paycheck, I noticed I had a ton of missing hours. So when I asked my boss about it, she told me we only get paid until the store is closed. So that night, I walked out when the store closed. They tried to guilt me into staying because the other team members need me. Frick that. I don't work for free, sorry, especially when I'm already making minimum wage. No thanks, not gonna happen. A similar thing happened to me when I worked at Taco Bell when I was a teenager. During the first closing shift I was scheduled for, after I was done cleaning everything, I told the manager I was ready to clock out and go home. She told me that she still had at least an hour of paperwork left to do and needed me to stay while she did it, since there was a rule that no one could be in the store alone. But she told me to clock out. I laughed in her face and told her, I clock out when I leave. She didn't make me clock out and never scheduled me to close again, so win-win for me. Used to work as a dental nurse. First patient of the frickin' day said he felt sick after having a local anesthetic. He looked sick too. I grabbed the bin and told him if he needed to vomit, take the bin. He held it in his lap and turned, vomiting down the side of the chair and all over my pants and shoes. Of course, I had to clean it up, and of course, they wouldn't let me go home to change. That's disgusting. Surely it's not ethical to let someone work with body fluid exposure on them the whole day. It's also a massive infection risk. When I walked into the room of a confused patient on blood thinners who had ripped out his IV and catheter and had crap and blood on every surface of his room, it looked like a murder zone had been committed. I've been through a lot as a nurse, but that was like going into war. I manage a fast food restaurant, and for me it's always things that have to do with the bathroom. From having to clean up adult magazines with splooge on the floor or walls to people either purposely crapping on the floor, even used hypodermic needles. Same boat here, but with customers instead of washrooms. Swearing at my underage staff puts a real bad taste in my mouth, and I am not nice about it. I don't miss either of these things. Good luck, everybody left in restaurant work. Hope all of your customers start watching The Bear and educating themselves on how hard you work. Psycho camp director lost her crap on all of the lifeguards because we said we weren't coming back next summer. Reality was we all had legit reasons. I was going to take summer courses to graduate early. Another guard was moving to university and was going to work in that city. Another guard got offered a head guard spot at a camp near her house, etc. Nothing that said we hated the current camp, just other things going on. We were told in a group meeting that if we weren't happy there, we could leave and she would find other guards. Following Friday, she calls us all in to tell us what a great job we're all doing and how happy everyone is going on the lake. Tuesday after that, she calls us in individually to tell us we aren't working hard enough and she sees us slacking off all the time. Lunchtime Tuesday, all of the guards walked into her office, told her to go frick herself in front of the owners of the camp, and we all piled into my Ford Focus and went out for beer. Went home that night to a message from the camp owner asking us to give him a call back. We'd all chatted and realized he'd called all of us. Called him the following day and told him what went down. He asked us to reconsider and that he would give us $5 an hour raise and report directly to him. We discussed it and agreed on the condition that Psycho Director apologized to us at a collective staff meeting. She refused and had a tantrum. Camp owner fired her on the spot, escorted her off the property, and we opened the lake back up. F you, Barb. I make $13 per hour on an ambulance. Every day is an "I don't get paid enough for this" moment. I was working late, like 2 a.m., in the office. My manager said, let's go to the convenience store to buy up some snacks and smokes. She sits in the back and we drive there. After we get our crap, she says, can we swing by this street intersection real quick? When we get to that intersection, I guess she sees a car that belongs to someone she knows, parked in front of her boyfriend's house. She starts to wail, cry, and kick around in the back seat, while my bewildered butt just holds the steering wheel with a stupid look on my face. After 20 minutes of that crap, we drive back to the office, I drop her off, and I go home. What the frick? So she sat in the back seat like you were a cab driver or something. She didn't want her boyfriend to see her up front, guarantee it. She suspected him, and the whole plan was to check in a different car. Worked at a fast food place about 13 years ago. This lady in the drive-thru claimed she was missing a sandwich. Our policy was to ask for bags back to verify. I asked to see the bags, 3 or 4, decent-sized order, and instead of handing them back like a civilized human being, she instantly started raging and throwing the food into the window while cussing me out. Guess what one of the items that she threw at me was? Yup, it was the missing sandwich. Crappy people will always try to scam something. Well over 2 decades ago, I fielded a call from someone insisting they were missing an entire 10-pack of tacos on their 20-taco order. I had no problem telling them I'd been making food all day and no, an order like that had never come up on my screen and to try scamming some other restaurant. I get it here like that all the time. No, you don't. You know how I know that? Because I'm here all the time and I've never seen you before and I've never done it like that. I've seen lots of, I'm friends with the owner here, too. Well, I guess I have many friends here that I didn't even know about. Countless times at the go-kart place, summer job, where I work, I've had to put up with special needs kids whose caretakers or parents dropped them off and just drove because they wanted a break from them. These kids, and adults, have a mental age of anywhere from 3 to 15 and many times they are unable to follow the directions that we provide or even listen to us. They are not only a danger to themselves, but to the other riders and to us, the staff. An easy solution to this would be for their parents to ride with them in a double and to drive for them, allowing everyone to have fun without having to put anyone in danger. However, that costs money, and they don't want to. One parent even said, "Why can't you just ride with him?" And when asked if the kid would be comfortable with other people, she said he wasn't. I wanted to call her a crappy parent, but I didn't want to lose my job. We can't deny them as they have the physical age to ride, but are hopefully putting rules in place to require parents of children with special needs to ride with their parents. I held nothing against these kids, but the fact is that their parents are responsible for them. If they want a break from them, they could hire a caretaker. Even then, though, I understand that bad parents do exist. However, it is the caretakers who refuse to take care of the kids who are unacceptable. You are getting paid. Do your job. I hope you're calling the cops every time a disabled individual is dropped off without supervision. As someone who's worked with this population, this is dangerous for them and you. Got change thrown in my face at work because a man was upset we didn't have meatballs. Now if I'm working, he'll come in, see me, and walk out. I work at Subway. I work in childcare. There was one time we had one kid who had a diaper blowout, and one kid who spewed everywhere. There's only 2 teachers, so this one has to handle the blowout and one the vomit, while also keeping the rest of the kids away from it all. I work in childcare too. I was the only one watching a group of 14 4- and 5-year-olds. One of the 4-year-olds spewed, and I spent the next few minutes trying to keep the kids from dancing around the spew, while also trying to clean up the girl who spewed. Thankfully, another teacher came to help me out. I would like to clarify that 14 children is not a ratio violation in my state, Tennessee, US. The state allows a class of children who are ages of 4 and 5 to be at a ratio of 16:1. Is this an insane number? Sure. Is it a violation? No. This was in the late 90s. I was working at Walmart at my first job as a teenager. I was floated to the garden department one day, and there was a guy looking at lawn fertilizer. I walked over and asked if he needed help. He said, "Not now, just looking at the different kinds you have." Pretty standard reply from the guy. So I said, "Okay, let me know." I walked away, and then swung back about 5 minutes later. Same guy has proceeded to rip open about 10 different kinds of fertilizer all over the ground and is rolling around in the stuff. He is also taste sampling. I call my manager because I didn't want to deal with it. Security escorted the guy out of the store and called an ambulance in case the ingestion of the fertilizer hurt him. My boss insisted that everybody be at their desks at 8:30 sharp. She made me take roll call on an attendance sheet and hand it in to her every day. She also made me do it at lunchtime when everybody left and came back, and when they left at night. Took roll for a bunch of adults 3 times a day. I don't work there anymore. In my various workplace complaint compilations I've done here over the past few months, there seem to be a couple of special workplaces that go completely fascist on their employees. They tend to have high turnovers, surprisingly. I had a company try to keep me once by offering me an entire grand more than I was taking at my new job. I told them how much it would take to keep me and that while still a raise, I'd be settling for a much smaller number at my new job. It also came with less stress, less management hell, and that I wouldn't be the sole person responsible for advising design, advising sales report, advising sales, advising project management, and advising on sites on how to do their jobs that they needed to do so I could do my one job. I laughed, hung up the phone, deleted all my scripts, and left. The guy that replaced me still asks me for help almost 3 years later now. I worked for the university's horse barn as a teenager. They had some pretty strict rules that I was not used to at other places. Like the horses were only allowed outside for 2 hours no matter what. Could be the most beautiful day and we would have to stop everything we were doing to bring them into their stalls. They were only ever allowed 2 squirts of fly spray which didn't cover their butts. Required to have their halters on 24/7 even in the stalls at night. Our boss clearly had zero experience with animals, or if he did, he just didn't care. One day, while one of the horses was having his feet trimmed, my boss went to pull out a weed whacker from the bottom of the shelf directly next to where the horse was standing. A lot like Jenga, the entire closet of machinery fell onto the horse, causing him to kick the farrier and run. Ever since that incident, the horse was a mess, so instead of hiring a trainer to fix the problem, they just locked him in the stall, all day 24/7. I quit shortly after that. I still wonder how that horse is doing. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I worked at a Toyota service department for a few months. It was terrible in general, but one day was the worst. During the week, I had a nail go straight through my foot, so I'm bandaged up and have to walk around to get everything. Probably 100 yards to the car wash, 40 yards to the shop, etc. My team for Saturday, 4 people, had one person quit on Wednesday and I had one person who had a funeral to leave early for. The other guy was new, so he was slow to get stuff done. My boss says he'll come in and help. Wednesday, we lock it at 60 appointments since we have short staff up front and back. We do take walk-ins too. Thursday, it's at 80 and we tell our boss to lock it. Again, on Friday, before closing, we see 110 appointments. He never locked it. Come Saturday morning, we had 130 appointments from 7 AM to 4 PM. I'm having to walk around a lot and ended up bleeding through 3 pairs of socks and bandages. I had to chase down about 80% of our customers' cars because our porters were goofing off. I had 53 opened tickets at 12 PM. We had a 4-hour wait for walk-ins and 2 with appointments. Haven't had lunch or a snack since they banned food and drinks at our desks. My friend is about to leave for the funeral, so I cover his work and my boss leaves for lunch, throwing his 20-ish tickets on my desk. So I'm 110 tickets deep now, helping the new guy with stuff, moving cars and trying not to pass out. Oh, did I mention 95 degrees Fahrenheit outside, no AC in our covered area, not inside, and 90% humidity? We didn't even get a breeze. Can't have snacks or drinks at our desk either. It gets to 3 PM and I'm rescheduling people, trying to get everyone out when their cars are done, but have to limp them down to pull them in front to leave after they pay. My boss still isn't back and the new guy quits. I end up getting in one car and blood from my sock drips onto our paper mats in the car. I cleaned everything out, vacuumed the car, washed it and pulled it up. Customer went ape crap that she saw blood on the disposable paper mat, about the wait, not getting a discount for her non-appointment service and demanded to speak to my manager. That was it. Called him up and sent to voicemail. I explained it to his mailbox, then called the GM to explain that I'd been alone for 3 hours dealing with an uncapped amount of customers. 5 technicians walked out, I'm still not recovered from my workplace injury, and that I'm finishing my paperwork to take my lunch break at 4 PM. Boss shows up when I'm about to leave to eat my lunch I bought, knowing their provided lunch would be gone before I could set foot in the break room. He told me that in our state I'm not legally allowed a lunch break during a shift, and I have to stay to finish out the customers on my tickets. I mentioned being here since 6 AM pre-printing everything, saying I just need to relax, and he said, "You didn't even clock in this morning, so unless you do what I say, you aren't getting paid." Service advisors are paid commission here and percentage of our parts profit for stuff sold. I don't even get 10 cents an hour. So I walked to my station, removed all of everyone's login copies of my permissions, deleted all of my notes, deleted all of my warranty macros, all the spreadsheets, and reset every custom line I added to our programs before I removed my admin permissions. Walked out and got a call when I got to my car asking, "Why isn't your login able to collect credit cards?" So he had to either write down credit card info, take cash or checks, or let them go. My GM asked me to come back at a pay raise and less hours, but I knew it was BS. My boss ended up getting let go in the following months since he couldn't get things back up to speed. My good friend moved to Mercedes parts, so he's happy. I ended up going to BMW for a bit after that and handled a few other franchises later. I worked IT with about 30 other developers and firefighters, supporting a large 3-shift-a-day manufacturing line. When the line computers went down, 300 workers leaned their backs against the wall, waiting for us to get the manufacturing process back up and running. We pretty much had freedom to stroll in at about 10 a.m. Many of us worked well into the evening, often took 2-hour lunch breaks. Most of us were on 24-hour call, which earned us half a day of comp time for any trip to the office, at any time of the day. A new boss was appointed over us. He quickly replaced our casual work hours with strict 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. hours, with a 1-hour break for lunch. Day 1 of his new policy, we were working on a failed mid-range computer on the manufacturing line. 300 workers hanging out watching us. Oops, it's 5 o'clock. Quitting time for us. New boss caught us in the parking lot just heading to the local bar and swiftly changed his new policy back to our standard. Reality sets in, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Take your pick. Our productivity and morale was through the roof with the old boss. He got promoted to corporate and company hired a new one. He goes through every single room at 8 a.m. sharp to check if people are working and if the guys that work outside the office already left. Same thing after lunch. Everyone is freaking miserable and performance went downhill. Worst thing is he micromanages the crap out of everything and it always has to be his way. It's a process that has been working and continuously improved, tested and proven to be completely efficient and give results we need? Yeah, forget about that. Let's do it his way because that's how he did it 20 years ago, even though he doesn't know how it works now. Team leaders, supervisors, engineers, nobody has a voice anymore. It hasn't been fun. I've repeatedly heard a saying that you should always give new management time to settle, even if their presence seems oppressive at the start. I guess this one is one of those cases where once you've seen what it's capable of, throw it out and start again. I walked into the bathroom and someone had smeared poop on literally every single surface, wall, everything, except one small part of the ceiling they couldn't reach. Poo-casso almost made me quit, but luckily my boss told me to lock it, not let anyone else use it, and he got someone to come in with a pressure washer. Pressure washer is a new level of poo smear cleaning. Love it! A few years into my flying career, so definitely not earning what people think pilots earn, I was asked to take a bunch of handicapped children and their carers for a 10-minute flight in a small twin-prop aircraft. All seemed to be going well until after landing when I smelt the unmistakable stench of spew. I looked around and all the passengers were looking horrified as the inside of the plane had been covered in what, I was told, used to be strawberry milkshake. I then had to vacuum and wash down the carpet in the plane. The vacuum died after picking up a large amount of this lumpy white substance and it started to drip back down the nozzle. It was a warm day and that didn't make the smell any better. I mentioned the handicapped thing not because I'm an awful person, but because his learning disability meant that he didn't think to inform his carer of his nausea, so there was no attempt to reach for the sick bag. We used to be paid half salary to attend seminars related to our industry that grant professional development hours. These seminars would often be at 7 a.m. at a hotel that was about a 2-hour drive for me, if I was lucky, in rush hour traffic to get to. But hey, it was paid and had free breakfast, so waking up at 4:30 to attend wasn't the worst thing in the world. The company announced that they believed attending the seminars was furthering our knowledge, therefore helping the company and therefore helping us, so we would no longer be paid to attend them, but we were still expected to go. I just said frick that and haven't attended a single one since then and delete all of the invite emails. I'm paid hourly, so taking the 6 hours out of my day to drive and attend a seminar I'm not being paid for is just plain stupid. I was asked why I haven't gone to any of them and told them I have a mortgage to pay. Haven't been asked to go again since. Direct support staff for people with minor disabilities, $13 an hour. Had a client go off the rails because he refused to take schizophrenia pills, was working night shifts and he gets up in the middle of the night and starts yelling random things, running around the house in the buck, peeing on everything, asking for me to put a cowboy hat on him, and he is now in a nursing home, bless his soul. Was making $2 above minimum wage for a furniture rental store. I was supposed to be a manager in training, but they screwed me and made me a jack of all trades. One day, they asked me to help out the repo runs and get back furniture from people that didn't pay. First red flag was going into an area and taking away a fridge from a family and watching them take all of their food out for their kids and getting friends to keep it cold. The nail in the coffin was going to someone's house at 10 p.m. at night, waking up the family, going into the bedroom of a sleeping child to wake him up so he can take away his bed as his parents didn't pay for it. As someone with young children at the time, I was disgusted in what I was doing. I was putting in 18-hour days doing these repossessions. I asked my district manager what I would be getting as compensation, as I've had to do some very terrible things. She promised I would be well compensated for saving the company a ton of money and product. I got a $15 gift card to buy alcohol. I don't drink. When my boss screamed at me for something they got wrong, this was a couple of hours after two co-workers almost came to blows because one of them left their phone overnight and the other, the first person to arrive in the shop, used it to send a prank text to another co-worker but didn't want to admit it. I work in security, and a bit under a year ago I worked at some kind of public TV event. My job was to keep people without passes out of a specific area which was intended for those working behind the scenes, to kick back, relax and get their lunches and all that. Anyway, the only ones I was allowed to give entrance to were people with passes and other security folks. But then, word from above came that the exception was to be made for some kind of supposedly famous child music group. I had no clue what they looked like, so 4 kids and their parents walk up, and I stop them. "Don't you know who they are?" quickly followed, and eventually it got cleaned up. And every time they kept bringing in more friends and family members, and the same song and dance continued. I don't think you understand what a contract means. Besides, this is an opportunity for you. When the new manager tried to move me to night shifts, weekends, from my day shifts, workdays, despite my contract being very specific about when I worked. "Hey, you were right. This is a big opportunity for me," was how I opened when I told her I was quitting. The look of shock and 15 minutes of silence on her part were hilarious and the best feeling interval of my entire life when she realized I'd thrown her own stupid words back at her.
History buffs of Reddit, what is one of the most fascinating stories you've learned that no one seems to talk about and can't be found in textbooks? The Lake Peigneur disaster. Until 1980, Lake Peigneur was a small-ish, freshwater lake with a maximum depth of about 10 to 15 feet, located in southern Louisiana. Locals mostly used it for trout fishing, and it also had a canal running 10 miles from the lake southward to the Gulf of Mexico. The main industry of the area was a massive salt mine that stood below the ground, partially underneath the lake itself. Thing is, natural salt deposits like this often coincide with oil reserves, so it wasn't out of the ordinary when oil companies came searching. In November of 1980, Texaco had set up a rig in the lake and was doing some exploratory drilling, hoping to make bank. Little did they know that one of their triangulation coordinates was slightly off, and so they had incorrectly guessed the location of the salt mine below their feet. Their drill bit punched into the roof of the salt deposit about 400 feet earlier than expected, and water began to drain slowly into the salt. And what happens when salt meets water? It dissolves. As the water dissolved more and more salt, it made more and more room for water to be sucked down, which in turn dissolved more salt and made more room, setting off a massive chain reaction. The oil rig on the surface keeled to the side and collapsed, its workers barely escaping before the water pressure became too much to swim through. The remnants of the rig were sucked into the bottom of the lake in what had turned from a tiny hole to a whirlpool, the force of the water shearing away soil and making a bigger hole as it went. The salt mine at the time was fully staffed with workers 1,500 feet below the ground, who were going about their daily shifts in the mine without any knowledge of the events taking place above them until they saw water dripping through the roof of the tunnels. Thanks to well-rehearsed evacuation plans, none of them died before the mine was flooded, but water is just about the worst thing you can see in a salt mine. The whirlpool on the surface, having eaten the rig, began to suck down the entire contents of the lake itself, including 11 barges, various small boats, and yes, the poor trout. The whirlpool grew into a maelstrom, its pressure increasing and in turn building more pressure by creating a bigger and bigger hole, eroding more and more of the salt mine. As it pulled down the entire lake, the water began to shear away at the shores, creating landslides and tearing trees out by the roots. Many of Jefferson Island's 100-year-old pecan trees were lost to the maelstrom, along with several local homes that sat on the shore of the lake and were ripped out by the foundation. The local botanical gardens was destroyed entirely as the soil underneath it was eroded in the span of only a few hours. Compressed air inside the mine finally exploded out through the mine shafts, quickly followed by a 400-foot geyser erupting from the mine's entrance. Not only did Lake Peigneur drain entirely into the mine, dragging 64 acres of destroyed land with it, but the pressure was so great that it also reversed the direction of the Decom Canal. The ocean water from the Gulf of Mexico rushed northward through the canal to fill the Peigneur Basin, temporarily creating the largest waterfall in Louisiana. The chaos didn't end until the pressure equalized about a week later. When things had finally calmed down, the lake had changed drastically. Its maximum depth was now about 200 feet, as opposed to its previous 10. Its shoreline had expanded, chimneys sticking straight out of the water where the houses had once been. 9 out of the 11 barges claimed by the maelstrom floated back to the surface, although 2 remained somewhere in the ground below. The botanical gardens were gone and many of the local trees. The salt mine was temporarily shut down, and although it did reopen, it was finally closed permanently in 1986. Texaco had to pay $32 million to the salt company and a further $13 million to the gardens. Miraculously, the only casualties of the disaster were the trout. The most important difference, however, is that today, Lake Panure is now a saltwater lake with ocean species 10 miles away from the ocean itself, all caused by some bad numbers and a 14-inch drill bit. Leave your mark on history and subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Be sure to like the video and turn on the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching! I wish more people realized how truly post-apocalyptic life after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire was. In Britain, we had large cities made of masonry, aqueducts, running water, lawyers and accountants, central heating, financial derivatives, a thriving civilization. After the collapse, we lost all of that. The plumbing and concrete broke down, nobody knew how to fix it. People built mud huts inside old stadiums and amphitheaters, using them as forts. That's some Diamond City stuff right there. It took centuries for the economy to recover to the point that currency was needed again, rather than bartering. A side point, back in the day, York and Thebes were in the same country. That still blows my mind. Starfish Prime. That time when a space nuke could be seen from Hawaii and the resulting EMP knocked out streetlights in Waikiki. Almost no one I know knows about this, and it wasn't in any school books we read. You'd think a space nuke to see if we could blow up an asteroid belt would make it into textbooks, especially when tens of thousands of people witnessed a sun in the sky at nighttime. The quote, May incident in World War II. American submarines were very good at getting away from Japanese surface ships. This was because the Japanese thought American submarines could only reach a much shallower depth than they actually could, and they could never set their depth charges to these deeper depths. Congressman Andrew May decided it would be a good idea to hold a press conference announcing this fact. From then on, the Japanese set their depth charges to these deeper depths. Quote, Vice Admiral Charles A. Lockwood, commander of the U.S. submarine fleet in the Pacific, estimated that May's security breach cost the United States Navy as many as 10 submarines and 800 crewmen killed in action. He said, I hear Congressman May said the Jap depth charges are not set up deep enough. He will be pleased to know that the Japs set them deeper now. Loose lips sink ships. Voyagers who worked for fur trade companies lived gross lives. Since they spent most of their time in a canoe with limited supplies, they made do with what they had. Gross stuff below. They were often missing teeth, so when they drank tea, they would shove a chunk of maple sugar in their teeth gaps and drink tea through it. When the tea was done, they would remove the sugar chunk, wrap it up, and save it for later. The number one cause of death for a voyager was complications of hernia because they carried heavy cargo on their backs. The average sack was 90 pounds, and they would make a contest out of who could carry the most. Often 3, and for the show-offs, 4 packs. That's 360 pounds of cargo, so of course, guts would herniate. They would tie their sashes as tight as possible around their stomach to keep all their internal organs in place. Since they tried to keep limited supplies so they could carry the most cargo, they would often use their toques as bowls. They would wax the yarn to waterproof the hats, so they would eat out of their hat that had hair, sweat, skin, and probably bugs in it. They didn't pull over to the shore to go to the bathroom. When you had to go, you would go over the side of the canoe. This applies for both number 1s and number 2s. So if you had to poop, you were pooping in front of the rest of your crew. Their hygiene was awful. They often would not bathe or clean themselves up, as it protected their skin from bugs and the sun. When they got close to a rendezvous point, they would somewhat attempt to shave and clean themselves up. They made do with what they had, but learning about them has made me appreciate modern amenities like showers, toilets, and access to health and dental care. Edit. Holy crap, I got gold! I know this is cliche, but thank you. Here's some quick fun Voyager facts as a thank you. They paddled about 50 strokes per minute, and the person who could carry a tune and played the fiddle were paid the best. They used music to keep pace and move faster. In Canada, there were 2 main fur trade companies, Hudson Bay Company and Northwest Company. Those two companies hated each other and would get in fights all the time. Turf wars were a real thing. They were often under 5'7" because having tall people in the canoe made it difficult, and it was harder work for tall people because it took more effort to swing the paddle down. And lastly, this song, Chevalier de la Table Ronde, translated to Knights of the Round Table, was their jam. It's about when they die, they want to be buried with all the wine and their head under a tap. Gross party animals to the end. It's a bit more recent, but I love the story of Gander. After 9/11, all the planes were grounded. Almost 7,000 people, which was about 66% of the local population, were forced to land in this tiny town of Gander, Newfoundland. The whole town worked together to make sure all the passengers would have everything they needed. The local ice rink was filled with frozen food that people donated. You couldn't find a closed door in town for stranded people to take a shower or just talk. Once the grounding of planes was lifted, those passengers pooled their money together and created a scholarship for the people of Gander to use. This is one of the greatest acts of kindness that I can view in history. To this day, Gander is the only place outside the United States where they have a piece of the World Trade Center. This is the story of the biggest troll who ever lived. In World War II, there was a Spanish spy named Juan Pujol Garcia who approached the Allies to work for them. When they refused, he approached the Nazis, and they accepted him, giving him the code name Arabelle. Once he earned credentials working as a Nazi spy, he approached the Allies again, this time getting a job as a double agent, codenamed Garbo. This is where it gets unbelievable. He fed the Germans a combination of misinformation, true but useless information, and high-value information that always got to the Germans just a little too late. He even started a spy network consisting of 27 sub-agents of his own. Keep in mind that not a single one of these sub-agents existed. They were completely imaginary. But regardless, he submitted expense reports for them and had the Nazis giving him money to pay their salaries. At one point, when he had to explain why some high-value information got to the Germans late, he told them that one of his spies had died. He actually got the Germans to pay the imaginary spy's imaginary wife a very real pension for her loss. Not only did his false information get the Nazis to waste millions of dollars, but he was also instrumental in convincing the Nazis that the attacks on D-Day were just a diversion, and the real attack was yet to come, keeping vital German resources away from the front lines. He is one of the only people to ever get an Iron Cross from the Germans, which required Hitler's personal authorization since he wasn't a soldier, and an MBE from King George VI. The Battle of Attu. It was the only battle of World War II fought on US soil. Attu is an island in the Aleutians. The Japanese invaded it intending to… who the heck knows, it was far too remote to serve as a staging for an invasion of the mainland. The American soldiers who were sent there had originally been slated to go to North Africa. They were sent to the Arctic, in the spring, with gear meant for fighting in the desert. They lost more men to the elements than to the Japanese. I'm a nurse, and a few years ago I had a resident who was in this battle. To his dying day, he was reluctant to talk about it, even 70 years later. What I shared here is all he would tell me. Peter the Great often forced dwarves to get married, and him and his friends would get drunk and attend the wedding. He had a fascination with dwarves, and he once forced someone who had made him angry to marry a dwarf. Edit. Since this post is getting a lot of attention, I thought I'd share that Peter basically had a fraternity, and it was called the all-joking, all-drunken synod of fools and jesters. They would drink and party basically all the time. You can find more about it on Wikipedia. During World War II, the Japanese outfitted special planes. Some were designed to be launched from submarines, with enough range to reach the west coast of the United States. The goal was to use incendiary bombs to start wildfires in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. One pilot, Nobuo Fujita, successfully dropped his bombs over the forest near Brookings, Oregon. Fortunately, a storm the night before had dampened the forest, and the fire started by Fujita's bomb was quickly controlled by the Forest Service. 18 years later, in 1962, Fujita returned to Brookings. He brought with him his family's heirloom, a katana that was over 400 years old. Fujita apologized to the townspeople for his actions during the war and revealed that if the townspeople demanded it, he would ceremoniously kill himself, commit seppuku, with the sword to make reparations for his actions. The townspeople would have none of it. Fujita was made an honorary citizen of the town and returned to visit it several times during his life, including one trip to plant trees in the forest he had bombed decades before. After his death in 1997, his daughter returned to Brookings and scattered some of his ashes there. The Fujita family katana is on display in Brookings after being given to the town by Fujita as a token of friendship. I may not be too much of a history buff, but I really like the story of Leo Major. Leo was a Canadian soldier serving in World War II. He was assigned to the division in charge of liberating the Netherlands. One day in the summer of 1944, he was alone on reconnaissance duty when he saw two German soldiers walking nearby. He killed one and captured the other, then captured their commanding officer and an entire German garrison after killing a couple more. He came under fire from other German soldiers and just kept walking. He single-handedly captured 93 German soldiers. In February of 1945, a truck Leo was in hit a landmine. He broke his back, a few ribs, and both ankles, and was told he would be discharged. Leo couldn't give enough craps, however, and a week later, he snuck out of the field hospital he was in and stayed with the Dutch family. After getting better, he made it back into his battalion and volunteered to do reconnaissance on the city of Zwolle. Once he departed, he decided to take the city himself. He convinced a German soldier to relay a message back to the German army, then through the night ran around the town making all the noise he could. He shot bullets, threw grenades, captured German soldiers, burned down the Gestapo, and cleaned out the SS building in Zwolle. His tactics were so effective, he convinced the German army that the entire Canadian army was invading the town. So by the morning, the town was free of Germans and the Canadian army just marched in. He has a street named after him in that town now. From Wikipedia, he declined the invitation to be decorated because according to him, General Montgomery, who was to give the award, was, quote, incompetent and in no position to be giving out medals. I like the cut of this guy's jib. Diarrhea was so widespread and common in the 19th century that people would develop opium habits because opium makes you constipated. Edit, well that escalated quickly, and for the exact diseases and reasons that people had diarrhea, I can only say that the 19th century was gross and nobody knew proper sanitary practices. I'm glad you guys all enjoyed debating Imodium, and today I learned Imodium is made from opiates. If you want to learn more about opium, diarrhea, or the combination of the two, then Google it because I'm busy and Google has better resources than I. I've told this story before, but it never fails to amuse me. Strap in, boys and girls. It's time to learn about that time in pre-revolutionary France where bleeding from your anus was a fashion statement. In early 1685, King Louis XIV of France developed a fistula, a small channel near his anus, resulting in great pain. Fistulas, much like the Wu-Tang Clan, ain't nothing to screw with. Eventually, the pain got so bad that he couldn't ride a horse, sit for long periods, which is kind of important when you're a king, or even make a bowel movement without regretting it immensely. The normal remedies were applied, enemas and poultices from morning until night with zero effect. Louis decided, you know what? Screw it. Let's go down the surgical route. Unfortunately for Louis, at the time, there was no surgical route. He hired a surgeon barber named Charles-François Félix and asked him to fix him. Not entirely stupid, and not willing to risk screwing up a novel surgery on the King of France, Félix requested 6 months to practice, which he did on prisoners. Live healthy prisoners. Sometimes as many as 4 a week, in an era where antiseptics and anesthetics didn't exist. The success rates were about as you'd imagine, although at least some of the prisoners survived, and eventually Félix felt confident enough to perform the surgery on the king. And it worked! Within 3 months, the king was riding his horse like nothing had happened, and Félix was the talk of the town. People were desperate to emulate the king so badly that people who were entirely healthy would pay Félix to perform the surgery on them, and those less willing to suffer, or at least less willing to pay, would fake having the surgery, wearing bandages known as Les Royales to mimic the king, and pretend that they too were cool and with it, even though with it meant suffering from a painful condition of the anus. When Philip of Macedon had ravaged many Greek city-states, things were looking bad for Greece. He then turned his attention to Sparta, sending the doomed state a letter that read, "You are advised to submit without further delay, for if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city." The Spartans sent back a rather to-the-point reply, "If." It's actually more cool even than that. That was the second message of that particular exchange. In the first, Philip asked the Spartans whether he should come to Sparta as a friend or as a foe. Their reply? Neither. Robert Liston, 1794 to 1847. A surgeon. In fact, he was described as, quote, the fastest knife in the West End, and could amputate a leg in 2.5 minutes. The faster the surgery, the more likely the recovery. Though during this particular amputation, he went so quickly he also removed his patient's testicles. However, he also amputated a man's leg in less than 2.5 minutes, who would later die of gangrene. In his haste, he accidentally cut off his assistant's fingers, who would later die from gangrene, and, apparently, cut through the coattails of a surgical spectator who was so scared he died of fright. This becoming the only surgery with a 300% mortality rate. Was he performing a surgery with a broadsword or something? It's time for the most ambitious crossover in the world. The Battle for Schloss-ITER, or Castle-ITER. If anyone told you that tankers from the 12th Armored Division of the United States fought alongside German Wehrmacht soldiers led by an SS Hauptsturmführer, as well as French POWs to defend a castle with the famous tennis player of the time, two former prime ministers of France, and Charles de Gaulle's sister, against an attacking force of the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division, you'd have called BS upon BS upon BS. But that is exactly what happened. In a small castle near Iter in Austria, the high-profile prisoners were segregated in the latter part of the war. In May, a prisoner escaped with a letter to Allied forces detailing the names and location of the high-value imprisoned French citizens. The first Allied unit he encountered was unable to effect a rescue, but started toward the prison before retreating back behind Allied lines. During this time, the head of the prison died under, quote, mysterious circumstances, and the second-in-command deserted, along with the host of SS guards. The prisoners, meanwhile, had taken over the prison and commandeered the arms left behind. In the nearby town, Wehrmacht troops, sick of the war and the Nazis, had deserted and formed a resistance unit that protected the citizens from Nazi hardline loyalists and SS retaliation. Major Joseph Sepp Gangl approached a unit of the 12th Armored under a flag of truce and requested aid. Captain John Lee agreed immediately, positioning his tanks at the city square as a show of force. Advised of the tenuous situation in the former prison, Lee set off with a number of tanks, but was unable to cross a small rickety bridge leading to Castle-ITER with all his forces. He proceeded with this tank, the Besseton Jenny, 2 squads of riflemen, Major Gangl, and a truck with a 10-man Wehrmacht Kannonkocher crew. On the way, they encountered a group of SS troops attempting to blockade the road, who they promptly ventilated. Arriving at the castle, the captain and the major were greeted by the unlikely sight of French prisoners working side by side with Hauptsturmführer Kurt Siegfried Schrader to shore up the castle defenses. The motley crew was not best pleased with the, quote, rescue force that didn't even quite make up a full platoon, but were happy to see any reinforcement. Lee staged his tank at the castle entrance, and the POWs, the Wehrmacht, and the 12th Armored Crew deployed around the castle into defensive perimeter. The crap was on. The next morning, a Waffen-SS group numbering over 100 launched their assault, one of the opening salvos destroying the tank that had been the heavy weapon support for the Castle-ITER defenders. The attack continued in waves, with probing during the night to find weakness in the defenders' lines. Even after being ordered by Captain Lee to seek shelter in the castle, the French POWs stayed on the front, pouring a heavy volume of fire at the attacking SS troops. Morning after pillbox, the following day opened bleakly, with sporadic gunfire continuing throughout the night, as well as repeated grenade blasts and 88mm cannon fire. The defenders were running low on ammo. Somehow, the telephone lines back to the nearby town had not been destroyed, and comms remained intact for the duration of the battle. Lee and Gangl called back for the reinforcements, and they arrived in the afternoon to stomp a mud hole in SS butt. The strangest battle of an insane war came to a close. It was 5 days after the Führer died from self-inflicted high-velocity lead poisoning, and 2 days before the official surrender of Germany. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.